Thank you, sir. Before starting with the session, I would like to introduce our today's speaker, CA Vishal Doshi, sir, who is become FCA DISA qualified, DRM qualified of ICI, currently Vice Chairman of WIRC of ICI, currently partner in KC Mehta and Company Chartered Accountants firm, specialize in statutory audits and tax audit, internal control, budgetary control, defining organization chart, and management development. He has given presentations on several topics on in AS, IFRS, as various seminars, workshops, certificate and intensive courses of ICI, WRC, and other academic institutions. He is faculty at several seminars of branches of WRC, lecture meetings and study circle meetings, and also student seminar and conferences. Was a visiting faculty to postgraduate course at MS University, Baroda. Other associations with ICI, peer reviewer for peer review board ICI, technical evaluator of finance statements for ICI awards for excellence in financial reporting and research committee of ICI, chairman of Baroda branch of WIRC of ICI for the year 2005, committee member of Baroda branch of WIRC for the year 2000 to 2003. He has also awarded as Rashtrapati Scout Award by Shri K.R. Narayan, Honorable President of India, appointed as expert members on the Board of Studies in Accounting and Financial Management for the term 2020 to 2023 by the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. He has held various committees of WIRC for the year 1920 and 2021. With this brief introduction, I request our today's speaker, Vishal Doshi, sir, to address the gathering.
Fine. Very good afternoon, friends. At the outset, I would like to thank Rohan Bhai and his team, the Nashik branch, for giving me this opportunity to interact with you and to discuss with you, present my views on the standards on audit. I understand this was originally to be a physical meeting, but considering the present situation, we are doing it virtually. But nonetheless, I will try to do full justice to the topic, and that is the standards on auditing implementation by the small and medium practitioners. Friends, I understand that standards on audit per se is a very dry subject, but we should not forget the importance of the standards on auditing. We are all signing the audit reports, and let me share that when it comes to the accounting standards, when it comes to income tax, when it comes to GST and all those laws, what happens is that there is a direct impact that the client faces, and therefore we put a lot of focus on the implementation of these laws for the clients. But when it comes to the standards on audit, this is what is mandatory only for the auditors and is not applicable to the clients. And therefore, somehow we give it a miss. We do not give so much of importance to it. And at the same time, when we talk of the small and medium practitioners, the difficulty is that they find that they do not have adequate resources, adequate time to implement these standards on auditing. So today what I would be doing, I would be talking about and discussing about some of the very basic documentation that a SMP can start with, should have in his or her audit file. It should ensure that the compliance on the standards on audit is visible as started with that audit firm. Friends, the importance with respect to the standards on audit lies from the audit report. We are all signing the audit report, but have we actually gone through what are we signing when it comes to the language of the audit report? See, when we are doing an audit, when we go to a client's place and there is a particular accounting entry or a journal entry or a particular accounting treatment that the client has given, then what we do is that we ask for the documentation, we ask for the background papers, we ask for all the supporting evidences, we have inquiries with the client, we document that, and then we say that whether that accounting entry, that transaction, that treatment is appropriate or not. Similarly, when we talk of our audit report, if what we are mentioning in the auditor's responsibility is that we have conducted our audit in accordance with the standards on audit specified under 143(10) of the Companies Act 2013. This is in respect of the company audits. Similar is applicable in case of non-corporates also. So now let us say that when I come to your office, I check your audit file and I say that you have mentioned this statement in your audit report that you have conducted your audit in accordance with the standards on auditing. Can you show me the documentation? Can you show me the evidence to prove that you have conducted your audit in accordance with the standards on auditing? Would you be able to prove that? In a majority of the cases, I feel no. If you look at the last line also, where as an auditor, when we are signing, we are saying that we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. So considering this, is the documentation that is there in the file, and especially I'm talking of the small and medium practitioners, is it evidence enough to give compliance of this? Maybe not. So today what we are going to discuss is some of the very basic, some of the elementary documentation that would help you in achieving audit efficiency as well as the audit quality. Friends, we all know that our institute, the ICI, is a member of the IASB, that is the International Accounting Standards Board, and the International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board also. So what it is that we take the international auditing standards and we converge them to fit into the Indian scenario, Indian requirement. These are the broad baskets in which the various standards on audit have been classified. And this is how, when you go through the standards on audit, the flow happens. Don't worry, I'm not going to take you through 2000 standards. These are just the broad buckets where these standards are mentioned. And I'm going to touch upon a few of them and more considered in a practical way that how a SMP can actually implement these standards on audit. So we start with some of the general principles and responsibilities, the 200 series, typically what we say. Again, friends, I am not going to touch across all the standards on audit or all the text of the standards on audit. I am just going to touch upon some of the important aspects. The overall objectives of the auditor, standards on audit, SA 200. When we are certifying the financial statements, when we are giving the audit report, what are the objectives? The objectives are typically that we need to have a reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement, which can be due to fraud or error, and which would help us thereby to express an opinion that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with the applicable financial reporting framework. So this is what is the objective as an auditor when we audit the financial statements. And then we also need to report on the financial statements and communicate as required by the standards on audit. So we have to issue a report in accordance with the standards on audit and also communicate as per the standards. So the standards on audit, the SA 200, typically it requires that we comply with all the relevant standards to the audit. That is first. And for that, we need to have an understanding of the entire text of the essay. We cannot and we should not represent compliance with the essay. That means that we should not say that a particular, we have complied with the essay unless we have actually complied with the requirement. So if you relate this to the earlier slide where I had mentioned that in our audit report, we say that we have conducted our audit in accordance with the standards on audit and that we have appropriate audit evidence to justify our opinion. So with respect to that, We are saying we are representing compliance, but the standard on audit, it says that you cannot represent compliance unless you have actually complied with the requirements. And there are exemptions that if a particular standard on audit is not applicable, or the entire standard, so the entire standard is not applicable, or certain portions of the standard are not applicable, that is where the exemption is. Other than that, the standards on audit we have to comply with fully. So the first document, friends, is about the engagement terms, the engagement letter, typically what we say as. What happens is that we get the appointment letter. Post the appointment letter, the first document that is required to be exchanged with the client is the engagement letter. Why the engagement letter is important is that because if we look at it from a commercial perspective, the engagement letter is sort of an understanding, it is sort of a contract between the auditor and the auditee. And therefore, this becomes a very, very important document where the roles and responsibilities of the auditor, the roles and responsibilities of the auditee are very, very clearly defined. And the engagement letter is signed off by the auditor as well as the auditee. The engagement letter, why it is important is because as an auditor, when we get this audit report, the engagement letter signed, the auditee, the client also, we ask a lot of things that, the books of account, we would have access to books of account, we would have access to all the factories or the shops or the units of the client, we would have access to all the documents and everything of the client, we would have access to their systems and processes of the client, we would have access to the people with whom we need to have inquiries, their accounts finance team, maybe the production team, their inventory team, whosoever it may be. All those things get listed out in the engagement letter. So over here, what I will do is I will share a sample of the engagement letter. Like this is the engagement letter. I'm sharing a PDF file. This is an engagement letter for a company audit, where it is addressed to the board of directors, where we refer to their appointment letter, informing about our appointment, reappointment, ratification, whatever it is for the financial beginning and so and so. The financial statements include whatever. Our audit will be conducted with the objective of expressing an opinion whether the aforesaid financial statements give the information required by the Act. So here we are saying that what would be our scope, but what is the purpose of this engagement letter. We also mention here, as we mentioned in the audit report, that we will conduct our audit in accordance with the standards on audit. So if the standards on audit requires certain compliances to be done by us, then it becomes important for the client also to support us, because we have signed an engagement letter which very clearly mentions that we would conduct our audit as per the standards on audit, which the client has agreed by signing to this engagement letter. So an audit includes, so this is basically a broad layout of an engagement letter. We would also say that what are the responsibilities of the management. When I say that they have understood that they are responsible for, so the management, the client is responsible for the presentation of the true and fair view in accordance with the financial reporting standards, the compliance with the provisions of the Companies Act, maintenance of accounts, preparation of the financial statements on going concern basis, preparation. So all these are the responsibilities of the client, of the management, which gets very clearly listed out in the engagement letter. Laying down internal financial controls, identifying and informing us of financial transactions or matters that may have any adverse effect on the functioning of the company. So that becomes the responsibility of the management to inform us, right? Because for us as an auditor, it is virtually impossible, I would say extremely difficult, to go through each and every transaction and find out, and something which is out of the books also, if there are certain exceptional transactions which are out of the books, it becomes very difficult for us to identify and report thereon. And therefore, the responsibility is cast on the management to identify and inform us of the financial transactions or matters. Pending litigation. See, again, this is important when it comes to contingent liabilities, that when we report contingent liabilities, we might not be aware of the facts of some of the items with respect to where there are litigations or where notices, the demands have been received or show cause notices have been received, and what is the progress of that. And therefore, we say that this is the responsibility of the management to identify all the pending litigations and inform us. Foreseeable losses, any delay in transferring to IPF. So these are typically all the terms and conditions Even the director's disqualifications becomes the responsibility of the management to inform us. Though principally, as our part of our audit procedure, we would do these activities, but principally this becomes the responsibility of the management to disclose to us, to identify us, to inform us that if there are any directors who are disqualified from being appointed as the directors. Then providing us access to all the documentation, like I mentioned earlier, books of account, vouchers, records, documentation of the head office, branches, access to subsidiaries, books of account and joint ventures wherever it is required, access to internal reports of frauds or any such thing, additional information that may, so unrestricted access to persons within the company, this all I discussed. So this becomes a very, very important document from the compliance point of view, from the standards on audit, the SA point of view. In addition to that, you can also say limit your liability, that you can say, see this paragraph which I am highlighting presently, that except to the extent if there is any gross negligence or willful misconduct from the part of the auditor, the audit firm, then you can, by virtue of this engagement letter, you can limit the maximum liability to the company. That means the payment that the auditor should make to the company, you can limit that to the amount of services or the fees that you would have got under the particular assignment. So, and that also if there is a gross negligence or willful misconduct. Again, how do you justify whether there is a gross negligence or willful misconduct or not? By way of the documentation that you would be having in your file. So this becomes a very, very important document, which is then signed by the proprietor or the partner or the director of the company and the audit firm. So why I'm saying this is important, that in most of the SMPs, we somehow believe that the engagement letter is something which is just a document which is required by the standards on audit. We somehow neglect it, don't give so much of importance. But friends, please understand that this is a very, very important document. This is the first document that is documentation requirement under the standards on audit. Definitely you have the appointment letter, and if you have taken a new assignment, it is a new audit, then your communication with the previous auditor is also an important document. But post that, the engagement letter becomes the most important document. Similarly, you have an engagement letter format with respect to tax audit. See, that was with respect to company audit. Now you have here is with respect to the tax audit, where again on a very similar terms and conditions, you are signing off this engagement letter. Friends, what I would request to you is that you have, let us say 28th Feb आपका है ये सब GST audit for the year ending March 19 and all, or March 20. And then, you know, what I would suggest is that you can go back to your offices and please ensure that you have the engagement letters that are prepared for all your clients, let us say for the audit year ending March 2021. These are sample formats which I will share with the branch, and they can in turn share it amongst the members. And I would request you, see, another burden what I feel there is a misnomer is that the SMPs feel that, you know, the engagement letter has to be prepared every year in case of all the clients, and that becomes a burdensome activity with respect to the small and medium practitioners because they don't have the adequate number of resources in the firm. Friends, the standard on audit is very clear that in case the audit is a recurring audit, then you need not have the engagement letter signed every year. There are certain factors which have been given out, which has been listed, where it says that only in case there is a change, let us say like a change in the management, a change in the law, or a change in the entity structure, yeah, they have increased the number of locations, the number of plants, and then there is therefore an increase in the scope. In such situations, only you need to go for a fresh engagement letter. Otherwise, you can continue with the same engagement letter. Hence, in case of a recurring audit where the client comes to you year after year, in such a situation, you should not, or you are not required to execute a fresh engagement letter every year. I believe that therefore this should not be a very, very, I would say, stringent requirement or a requirement that is difficult to implement by the small and medium practitioners. आपने एक बार एंगेजमेंट लेटर बना दिया तो वही चलेगा सालों साल till there is any I have listed out on the screen the reasons which might require a change in the engagement letter, otherwise the same engagement letter would continue on a year on year basis. So my request to all friends over here is that please ensure that you prepare the engagement letter. एक बार आप मार्च 21 का बना दीजिए. Yeah, another suggestion what I would give is that don't mention the fees in the engagement letter. What you can do is you can always mention that the fees would be as per our mutual agreement, mutual discussion. So whenever there is an increase in fees, let us say you increase fees every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever would be the the time period in which the fees increase happen, at least even at that point in time, you did not have the fresh engagement letter executed. So what would happen typically is that you have an engagement letter which would continue perpetuity till any of these reasons on your screen get triggered for a execution of a fresh engagement letter. I will give an example when a fresh engagement letter might be required. Let us say hypothetically that we are talking of a company audit, and we had a few years back that the internal financial control over financial reporting was made applicable in such cases. Now my original engagement letters would not contain anything about IFCFR. But now the law requires me as a statutory auditor to report on IFCFR. So I have two options. Either I execute a fresh engagement letter for IFCFR certification, or the paragraphs with respect to IFCFR I can include as part of the main engagement letter. And so that would require a change in the engagement letter going forward. But I would request friends that प्रिपेयरिंग एंगेजमेंट लेटर इज अ वन टाइम एक्टिविटी. फर्स्ट टाइम आपको बिल्कुल तकलीफ होगी क्योंकि आप सारे क्लाइंट्स का एक साथ बनाएंगे, बट उसके बाद it would be a recurring audit, recurring assignments, and therefore you would not be required to prepare that every year. And therefore it would be only where you are having new audits or new assignments being taken over that you would be requiring the engagement letter to be executed, or in case there is a change in the for the reason. So I feel that this is not a tough task and all firms can execute the engagement letter. Friends, we normally say that घर में बच्चे होते हैं तो क्या होता है कि as parents, whatever we speak, whatever we do, they learn from us. Similar thing is with respect to audit quality. In our firm, whatever philosophy as leaders we continue. हम लोग जो बोलते हैं कि भाई ऐसा ऐसा करना है. अभी क्या होगा, लेट अस से आप एंगेजमेंट लेटर का स्टार्ट करते हैं तो फर्स्ट टाइम आपके ऑफिस में भी सब लोग बोलेंगे कि अरे ये क्या नया आ गया, इतने साल तक तो हमने कुछ बनाया नहीं है. बट एवरी ईयर अभी, बट देन व्हाट हैपेंस, इट बिकम्स द पार्ट ऑफ द प्रोसेस. आपको आज हम लोग जो भी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, आई वुड बी वेरी हैप्पी अगर आप उसको आपके फर्म के ऑडिट प्रोसेस में आप डाल दे. तो वंस इट बिकम्स पार्ट ऑफ द प्रोसेस देन इट इज नॉट एट ऑल डिफिकल्ट टू इम्प्लीमेंट. फिर क्या होता है, आपकी फर्म ऑडिट क्वालिटी के लिए मानी जाती है, आपकी फर्म ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन के लिए मानी जाती है, और कोई भी नया आपके एम्प्लॉय या आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट आपके ऑफिस में ज्वाइन होता है तो आपके फर्म का कल्चर है कि भाई ये सब डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हम लोग बनाते हैं. सो दे विल फिट इनटू दैट कल्चर एंड दे विल आल्सो स्टार्ट इम्प्लीमेंटिंग दैट. So as leaders within the firm, we have to ensure that the qualitative aspect for an audit we give, it is a top down approach. We have to be very serious that these are the things which are required, which is required, must required, and therefore everybody in the office they get the signal कि नहीं ये तो हमको करना ही है और वो लोग करेंगे. So that is what SA 222-220 says, that the leadership responsibility has to come from the top with respect to the quality, and we have to communicate that, keep communicating that to our team in our office, that quality is something which cannot be compromised in my firm. Ethical requirements, SA 220, about integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality and professional behavior. Friends, these are fundamental principles of ethics, which I would not spend much time on today because we are more on the documentation and the standards on audit. All firms would definitely practice these ethics. These are fundamental principles, and therefore I would not spend much time on that today. Audit documentation. Now coming to some very important aspects. Friends, I have seen in small and medium practice firms, we do the audit. I am not at all doubting with respect to the audit quality or any such thing. It is just the documentation part where we are lacking. तो एक ये आपके स्क्रीन में जो है, that if you didn't document, you didn't do it. You know, that is what you should follow as a philosophy. आप आपके ऑफिस पे भी ये पोस्टर लगा दीजिए कि भाई इफ यू डिडंट डॉक्यूमेंट यू डिड नॉट डू इट. इट इज एज सिंपल एज दैट. हम लोग जैसे मैंने पहले भी एग्जांपल दिया कि हम लोग किसी क्लाइंट के ऑफिस में जाते हैं और उसके पास समझिए कोई पर्टिकुलर कैश पेमेंट का सपोर्टिंग नहीं मिलता है, तो हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं उसको कि भाई ये पेमेंट आपका सपोर्टिंग नहीं है तो इसमें कुछ गड़बड़ है. दैट इज व्हाट वी नॉर्मली से एज एन ऑडिटर. So I feel similarly, you also as an audit firm, you have to imbibe this quality as a audit documentation कि अगर ये डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं हुआ है मतलब ये प्रोसेस हमारे ऑफिस में फॉलो नहीं हुआ है. So if you don't find the engagement letter, it would mean कि भाई ये engagement letter का आपने प्रोसेस किया ही नहीं है. So at that point in time, if let us say I am a peer reviewer, आई कम टू योर ऑफिस और आप बोलते हैं कि अरे विशाल भाई ये जो एंगेजमेंट लेटर है ना हमने वो क्लाइंट को भेजा था बट क्लाइंट ने साइन करके वापस नहीं भेजा है, बट आपके फाइल में डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं है मतलब आपने भेजा ही नहीं है. इट इज एज सिंपल एज दैट. सी दीज आर द थिंग्स व्हिच वी नीड टू डू ऑन अ रिपीटेटिव बेसिस. नाउ आई वुड शेयर सम वेरी बेसिक एलिमेंटरी ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन व्हिच आई बिलीव एज स्मॉल एंड मीडियम प्रैक्टिशनर्स वी कैन एंड वी शुड have in our office, because this also brings about a lot of, like I said earlier, audit efficiency and audit quality. So normally हमारे ऑफिस में क्या होता है that कोई भी क्लाइंट का फोन आता है कि विशाल भाई हमारे बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स रेडी हो गए हैं, तो व्हाट डू वी डू, ऑफिस में बोलते हैं अच्छा देखते हैं कौन फ्री बैठा है, 2-3 आर्टिकल है या जो भी है उनको बोलते हैं अरे इसका फोन आ गया अभी तुम 1-2 दिन में उसका ऑडिट चालू कर देना. एंड देन दैट team goes and starts doing the audit. Now, have we spent time with them to make them understand वो लोग अभी क्या करेंगे ऑडिट में, कितना वाउचिंग करेंगे, वेदर दे उसने पहले जो ऑडिट किया है वही प्रोसेस वो लोग इसमें भी फॉलो करेंगे. सो देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ अनसर्टेनिटी. और हम लोग के ऑफिस में बहुत बार क्या होता है, बिकॉज एज लीडर्स हम लोग कभी कभी काम में इतने दूसरे काम में इन्वॉल्व हो जाते हैं तो भी हम लोग भूल जाते हैं कि वो ऑडिट भी स्टार्ट हुआ है और एक हफ्ते बाद पता चलता है कि अरे वो ऑडिट चालू किया है, तो उसको फोन करते हैं तो बोलते हैं सर एक हफ्ते तक हमारा अभी वाउचिंग भी कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ है. एंड देन वी से कि एक हफ्ता थोड़ी लगता है वाउचिंग में, बट वेदर वी हैव built a process within our office to ensure that there is an audit efficiency. I will share with you a document which I typically say is the audit plan. This is a very simple document that can be implemented by a small and medium practitioner. आप जैसे क्लाइंट का फोन आता है, आप बोलते हैं कि मिस्टर एक्स आपके ऑफिस में आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट्स है या ऑडिट टीम है जो भी है कि भाई इसका ऑडिट आपको स्टार्ट करना है. इट इज फाइन, बट बिफोर द ऑडिट इज स्टार्टेड आई सजेस्ट that this is one document which you must start preparing in your offices, which is an audit plan. इसमें अगर आप देखेंगे तो नेम ऑफ द क्लाइंट, ऑडिट पीरियड कब कमेंस किया, हु इज द ऑडिट कोऑर्डिनेटर, ऑडिट टीम. ऑडिट टीम क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है, बहुत बार क्या होता है कि हमारे ऑडिट्स जो है वो 2-3 फेज में होते हैं. पहले एक दिसंबर का कट ऑफ लेके हम लोग जनवरी फरवरी में ऑडिट करते हैं शायद. फिर हम लोग, बिकॉज मेनी क्लाइंट्स आर वेरी सेंसिटिव एंड दे से कि विशाल भाई आप ये पहले से ऑडिट कर लो, तो अगर कुछ भी रेक्टिफिकेशन या कुछ करना है, टैक्स के नॉन कंप्लायंसेस है जिसको कंप्लाई करने को हम लोग 31 मार्च के पहले उसको कर देते हैं. सो दैट इज द फर्स्ट फेज व्हेन द ऑडिट स्टार्ट्स. दूसरा फेज होता है देन वी टेक अप द पीरियड जैन टू मार्च. जैन टू मार्च जब लेते हैं दैट माइट हैपन समटाइम इन लेट अस से मई और जून, तो तब ऑडिट प्लानिंग तो वो एक दूसरा सेट होता है. और मे बी द थर्ड फेज would be जब फाइनलाइजेशन, जब बैलेंस शीट बनता है, टैक्स ऑडिट बनते हैं, नोट्स, डिस्क्लोजर्स एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स हैपन. सो टिपिकली वी कैन से दैट द ऑडिट इज हैपनिंग इन 3 parts. Now when we mention the audit team, so each time the audit plan has to be prepared which would be different from the earlier audit plan. So अगर मैं April to December का पीरियड कवर कर रहा हूँ, so I would have an audit team which would say that Mr. X, Miss Y, whatever, 3-4 बंदे जो भी है उसके नाम आएंगे. Now, why this name is important, that when I do a subsequent audit, the next period का audit, तो I know कि ये किसने पहले किया है. Another thing is that अगर मेरे पास रिकॉर्ड है, तो अगर कोई क्वेरी पेंडिंग है या कुछ डेटा या डॉक्यूमेंट चाहिए विद रिस्पेक्ट टू प्रीसीडिंग ऑडिट, या बहुत बार हमारे क्या होता है कि भाई क्लाइंट को कोई नोटिस आती है, कुछ डॉक्यूमेंट चाहिए, कोई वर्किंग चाहिए, और वो क्या होता है इमीडिएटली हमको ही फोन करते हैं, अरे विशाल भाई ये बैलेंस शीट चाहिए या इसका स्कैन कॉपी आपके पास है, डोनेशन रिसीट आपके पास होगा, आपके ऑफिस वाले ऑडिट के टाइम ले गए थे, तो आप काइंडली उसको भिजवाइए. हम लोग बोलते हैं अरे भाई आपका डोनेशन रिसीट आपके पास तो होना ही चाहिए, बट देन ऑल्सो दे टेल अस बिकॉज दे नो कि भाई हमारे ऑफिस से जल्दी मिल जाएगा और हम लोग इमीडिएटली उसको दे देंगे, रादर देन देम टेलिंग देयर ओन पीपल टू फाइंड दैट आउट. सो इन सच केसेस व्हाट हैपेंस, ये ऑडिट टीम अगर लिखा हुआ रहता है तो हमारे पास कंटिन्यूटी रहती है. सेकंड इज हमारे पास कंट्रोल और मॉनिटरिंग रहता है, दैट इफ आई वांट कि भाई उसका सेकंड फेज ऑडिट या थर्ड फेज ऑडिट है तो उसमें आई वांट टू रिपीट द सेम पर्सन, तो ये डॉक्यूमेंटेड होता है कि फर्स्ट टाइम ऑडिट टीम में कौन था तो मैं उसी को रिपीट करूं तो कंटिन्यूटी में मेरा ऑडिट बेटर होगा, एंड दैट इज वेयर आई से द ऑडिट एफिशिएंसी कम्स इन. Then we say the total audit days planned for audit, scope of work, vouching, opening balance verification, कौन से दिन में होगा, कौन करेगा, and then whether there are any remarks. So we will come to materiality, but then maybe you can put कि भाई इसमें 5,000 के ऊपर के वाउचर देखने हैं कि इसमें ऐसा सैम्पलिंग करना है, या if there are any issues of the last year which you have to carry forward to the next year, तो उसके related कुछ होता है. So all those things get documented over here. And finally, you as a partner or a proprietor, you would sign off this audit plan. The advantage of this is, when we talk of small and medium practitioners, the important aspect is that many times the client discuss so many things with us that we are aware कि उसने कोई नया प्रोडक्ट चालू किया है या कुछ ट्रेडिंग एडिशनल एक्टिविटी चालू की है, या इस साल एक्सपोर्ट एज अ नया बिजनेस उसने स्टार्ट किया है, कोई नई फैक्ट्री ली है. There are n number of things they discuss with us which our audit team or the persons going on audit would not be aware. The moment this audit plan comes on your table, you would immediately reflect on, you will immediately recollect, अरे इसका फोन आया था, ये एक नया प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च हुआ है, तो आप थोड़ा उसमें ज्यादा स्क्रूटिनी या उसमें ज्यादा इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना कि भाई उसमें कैसा है, परफॉर्मेंस क्या है. या when it comes to segment reporting or when it comes to a related party, उसने लोन दिया है, कुछ भी है, there would so many things that he would have consulted you during the year before the audit starts, and you would be aware of. So the moment this audit plan comes to you on your table, and this should be signed off before the audit is started. So once you sign this off, you are aware. अगर किसी ने लिखा है कि भाई मेरे को कैश वाउचिंग है, उसमें a person has mentioned that 2 article students for 5 days, then definitely you can question कि भाई ये 5 दिन क्यों लगेंगे कैश वाउचिंग में. Have you studied the file? Have you studied the balance sheet of the last year? Have you studied the टैक्स ऑडिट रिपोर्ट ऑफ लास्ट ईयर, कितना वॉल्यूम है, कितना टर्नओवर है, क्या प्रोडक्ट है, तो उसके बेसिस पे. सो व्हाट आई वुड सजेस्ट आल्सो इज दैट बिफोर द ऑडिट प्लान इज प्रिपेयर्ड, you must insist that your team spends at least half an hour to 1 hour looking into the previous year's audit files, the financial statements, the tax audit of the previous year, and then filling up this audit plan. When it comes to your table, you would ask these questions and automatically a lot of things would get streamlined. कहीं पे ज़्यादा टाइम गया है, कहीं पे ज़्यादा टाइम प्लान किया है, तो आप उसको कंट्रोल कर सकते हो, आप उसको चेक कर सकते हो. कहीं पे कम टाइम है तो आप रिमार्क्स में लिख सकते हो कि दिस इज एन एडिशनल एरिया विच यू नीड टू लुक इनटू, एंड मे बी इवन जो टीम मेंबर इसमें आप अलॉट किए हैं, आपको लगता है कि कोई बंदा ज़्यादा स्मार्ट है, तो यू माइट रीजिग दी एक्टिविटीज इन अ वे कि भाई जहाँ पे आपका रिस्क जो है, ऑडिट रिस्क है, मिनिमम है, वहाँ पे आप कोई वीक टीम मेंबर को लगाए, और जहाँ पे आपका ऑडिट रिस्क जिसमें ज़्यादा है उसमें आप कोई स्ट्रॉन्ग टीम मेंबर लगाए. See, another thing where you can put in the remarks is like a journal register. Friends, journal register typically हम लोग जब पढ़ते थे तो जर्नल वॉज एन एडजस्टमेंट एंट्री, मतलब रेक्टिफिकेशन एंट्रीज था या कोई एक्सेप्शनल एंट्रीज थी, दैट इज वेयर द जर्नल वुड कम इनटू द पिक्चर. बट टैली या दूसरे सॉफ्टवेयर में क्या होता है, सारे परचेजेस, सारे एक्सपेंसेस एंड जर्नल एंट्रीज, एवरीथिंग इज पुट इन एज अ जर्नल. तो नॉर्मली हम लोग ऑडिट में जब पढ़ते थे, जर्नल वॉज एन एरिया वेयर वी यूज टू से दैट 100% vouching should be done in the journal entry, because that is where all the rectifications and everything happen. But the moment we say journal 100%, abhi ke jo journals, like I said, purchase expense sab mila ke hote, it becomes so voluminous that the actual journal vouching loses its importance. And therefore in the remarks you can say that journal register, debit note, credit note jo likhe hai wo 100% hai, but they are excluding the purchase and expense. So this is where an audit plan would come into play, and I can assure you that this is a very, very simple document which you can implement in your office. This is a very, very simple document that can be prepared and which will bring about a lot of audit efficiency. This is a document by which your team would be geared up, it would be prepared. Because बहुत बार क्या होता है कि नए आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट्स जाते हैं क्लाइंट प्लेस पर, तो वो रिपीटेटिव क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं, कुछ ऐसे क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं which are already settled issues, and once they read the file, previous year's audit file and all those, they would be aware of certain things by which we are able to avoid such repetitive questions also. So friends, here my suggestion is that audit plan is something which is very, very important and very simple to implement in your offices, and which you should and must start. Along with the audit plan is also the audit progress report as a document as an audit document which you can start implementing in your offices. Like the name suggests, audit progress report is a document where आपके audit team जो है वो रोज जो जो काम कर रही है उसका वो लोग वहाँ पे पूरे डिटेल्स लिखते हैं कि भाई ये दिन हमने ये काम किया है, ये दिन हमने ये ऑडिट किया है. So many times what happens is that जैसे मैंने अर्लियर बोला कि भाई एक हफ्ते बाद 10 दिन बाद हम लोग को रियलाइज होता है कि वो ऑडिट तो अभी चल रहा है और वहां पे जब फोन करते बोलते हैं सर अभी तक तो मेरा वाउचिंग चल रहा है. एंड देन यू आर सरप्राइज कि अरे लास्ट मिनट है, इतना प्रेशर है ऑडिट्स कंप्लीट करने का और एक हफ्ते से सिर्फ वाउचिंग ही चल रहा है, तो ये ऑडिट कब कंप्लीट होगा, राइट? सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज व्हेन द ऑडिट प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट इज देयर एंड व्हेन यू इन्वेस्टिगेट बिफोर दैट व्हाट हैपेंस इज आपको पता चलता है कि भाई आर्टिकल 3 दिन नहीं गया था इसलिए ये एक हफ्ते तक ऑडिट वाउचिंग चल रहा है, या वहां पे अकाउंटेंट को कोई जीएसटी का या इनकम टैक्स का कुछ नोटिस आ गया जिसके डॉक्यूमेंट्स प्रिपेयर करने में वो बंदा बिजी हो गया, ही हैज नॉट बीन एबल टू सॉल्व द क्वेरीज ऑफ द आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट्स और उसके लिए ये इतना टाइम लग रहा है. सो यू नो देयर कैन बी एन नंबर ऑफ रीजंस बाय व्हिच द डिलेज आर हैपनिंग. द मोमेंट यू हैव एन ऑडिट प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट, all these things would come up to the surface. See, we are all chartered accountants and we know कि एक आपका ऑडिट प्लान है, एक साइड आपका ऑडिट प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट है. So once you match these two documents, automatically there is a variance analysis that you can do and you can find out कि भाई ये क्लाइंट में जब हमने प्लान किया था कि वाउचिंग आपका 3 दिन में कंप्लीट हो जाना चाहिए फॉर 2 आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट्स, 3 दिन में वाउचिंग कंप्लीट होना चाहिए, तो why have you taken 6 days? When you start investigating these things, then you will find out that मैंने जैसे बोला कि भाई आर्टिकल 2 दिन नहीं आया था या बीमार पड़ गया था या क्लाइंट के प्लेस पे कोई इशू था, वो उसका अकाउंटेंट नहीं आया था. एंड मेनी टाइम्स व्हाट हैपेंस इज जब क्लाइंट के वहाँ पे पार्ट टाइम अकाउंटेंट आते हैं तो वो वीक में एक बार या 2 बार ही आता है और हमारी जो क्वेरीज होती है वो सॉल्व नहीं होती है, बाय विच थिंग्स गेट स्टक अप एंड दैट वर्क डज नॉट गेट कंप्लीट. But all these inefficiencies, I would say, would come to your table when you have the audit plan and the audit progress report, and every member of your team becomes accountable for whatever work they are delegated to do as per the audit plan. And whatever are the deviations, you would have documentary evidence to question them कि भाई ये इतना variation हुआ तो क्यों हुआ है, and they would explain. And again, what would happen is by this, like I'm saying, audit efficiency, if there are any inefficiencies that are happening, they would come to your table, you would be able to scrutinize them कि भाई यहाँ पे problem हो रहा है, इसमें time ज़्यादा लग रहा है, and maybe we'll come to the standard on communication with those charged with governance. But maybe what can happen is that when you are interacting with your client or with the accountant of the client, you can highlight कि भाई यहाँ पे इतना time ज़्यादा गया है, and at least you can highlight, you can suggest some audit efficiencies, you can suggest some system improvements, and maybe for certain exceptional transactions or entries or something where a lot of time has gone, if possible, you may also for a particular year ask for an increase in fees for the time and efforts additionally that have gone. So again, the audit progress report becomes very important. Friends, the third document. So I hope everybody agrees that the audit plan and the audit progress report is something which is implementable by the small and medium practitioners, and it is not very, very difficult to put it into practice in your office. Friends, another thing is when we talk of audit documentation is with respect to checklist for the accounting standards. We have in our mindset that when it comes to the non-corporates, so there are some standards like the cash flow या related party या segment reporting जो applicable ही नहीं होते, which is not true. It is not at all correct. There are 3 levels that have been prescribed by the ICI, that is level 1, level 2, and level 3 entities for when we talk of the non-corporates. Now, this is a checklist with respect to the applicability for the accounting standards. This is not the detailed accounting standard checklist that the institute has prescribed, but this is basically a checklist with respect to the applicability of the accounting standards. So if you look at this particular, this is for non-corporates. Again, the level of enterprise is level 3 enterprise, right? Which is the smallest in the whole hierarchy. So over here, like cash flow statement is something which is not applicable. So it is already mentioned. अगर इसमें जो standards applicable है, you can ask your team कि they should fill this up कि कौन से standards applicable है. Now let us say if we are talking about a software company, then valuation of inventories would not be applicable. So ये वाला जो sheet है applicability में valuation of inventories में no आएगा. And reason if not applicable is number 2, that is no such transaction, because it is a software company, there is no inventory and it would hence not be applicable. So similarly construction contract है तो software company है, construction contract would not be applicable. Revenue recognition, yes, definitely it would be applicable. Property plant equipment, yes, it would be applicable. The effect of forex. Now let us say जो सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी है अभी तक डोमेस्टिक ट्रांजैक्शंस कर रही थी, नाउ फ्रॉम दिस ईयर ऑनवर्ड्स they have had some import export transactions and therefore AS11 would be applicable. नॉर्मली क्या होता है कि हम लोग प्रीवियस ईयर की अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज और सब कुछ ले कि हम लोग इस बार का पूरा कॉपी पेस्ट करके वी go ahead, and in the process there are chances that we might miss out on some of the additional disclosure requirements because some more standards would have been applicable this year which have been made applicable, which were not applicable in the preceding year. So like है तो इसमें यस आता है. द मोमेंट इसमें यस आता है, सो व्हेन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स कम टू यू फॉर रिव्यू और मे बी व्हेन योर टीम इटसेल्फ इज फिलिंग अप दिस फॉर्म, दिस डॉक्यूमेंट, इट वुड रियलाइज कि अरे AS11 तो इसमें एप्लीकेबल है, तो इसके रिलेटेड अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी जो है वेदर दैट हैज कम एज पार्ट ऑफ द डिस्क्लोजर और नॉट. द मोमेंट दैट रियलाइजेशन कम्स तो पता चलेगा कि अरे ये तो लास्ट टाइम का कॉपी पेस्ट किया था, इसमें लास्ट ईयर नहीं था अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी, फॉरेक्स रिलेटेड अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी, तो हमको इस बार इसको ऐड करना है बिकॉज इस बार इसके रिलेटेड ट्रांजैक्शंस है, ये स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल है. सो दिस बिकम्स अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टूल, अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट चेकलिस्ट टू एंश्योर कि जो भी डिस्क्लोजर रिक्वायरमेंट्स है, एंड स्पेशली क्या होता है द स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस, when we talk of the proprietorships, when we talk of the partnerships, because I am talking of non-corporate entities, so proprietorships, partnerships, LLPs, which are small entities, they look forward to the chartered accountant, the auditor, for support with respect to accounting policies and all the relevant disclosure. And therefore, it becomes very important for us that we ensure that proper compliance and proper disclosure is done. That is good for the client also, and it is good for us also, because we are also in our audit report mentioning, certifying that all the applicable accounting standards have been duly complied with. So this can be also introduced as a document where you have the finally the signature of the team leader, the audit manager, the article in charge, जो भी है वो finally sign off करके आपके ये documentation में रखता है. So these are some of the relaxations. This format you can see is comprehensive. आपको कोई standard लेने की जरूरत नहीं, इसमें से ही पता चलेगा कहाँ पे exemptions है, क्या exceptions है, and other than that this standard is applicable for all the, so this format I would say is applicable with respect to all the entities which are level 3. I will show one more applicability is again with respect to level 1 entity, right? So this is a checklist. So if you see यहाँ पे जो format है पूरा conditions है जो level 1 को applicable होता है, which would make the entity a level 1 entity, right? That is listed out in this particular table. So where you have that the turnover of the immediately preceding accounting period is in excess of 50 crores, या borrowing or deposit during the accounting year is in excess of 10 crores. तो ये जो entities है, if there are any such entities, these become level 1 entity. So what happens is the moment आपके टीम में ये फॉर्म फिलअप अगर आप मैंडेट करते हैं एज अ पार्ट ऑफ योर ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन कि लेवल 1, लेवल 2, लेवल 3, इवन इन केस ऑफ कंपनीज आई हैव दैट फॉर्मेट दैट वेदर इट इज अ स्मॉल एंड मीडियम कंपनी और अ नॉन SMC, these conditions, the moment they start filling up these conditions, and यहाँ पे आता है कि turnover exceeds 50 crores in the preceding year, it is yes. If it is yes, then what happens? Friends, all these standards are applicable. There is no exemption for any standards. आपका कैश फ्लो स्टेटमेंट भी एप्लीकेबल होगा, सेगमेंट रिपोर्टिंग भी एप्लीकेबल होगा, और आपका रिलेटेड पार्टी डिस्क्लोजर भी एप्लीकेबल होगा इफ इट इज अ लेवल 1 एंटिटी. So this becomes a very good, I would say, internal check, internal control tool within our office to ensure that the proper compliance of the accounting standards is being done. So there are similar formats, but like I said, the audit plan, the audit progress report, and now these checklists for the accounting standards applicability. These are the documents which I believe as a start for any small and medium practice firm, we can definitely implement, and it is much easy to implement. So similarly, like I said, these are the checklists. We had the level 3 checklist. This is the level of enterprise, small and medium size company. So the first two formats we discussed were that it was non-company, and this is where it is a small SMC company, and the conditions are already there which are to be fulfilled. And once it is fulfilled, then you have to fill this up, and this should be done for all clients all year, each of the year. Then it becomes a proper documentation. And like I said, that audit quality, audit documentation, as leaders, we should percolate the moment you implement this. I can assure you that the audit efficiency would come in and the audit quality would also improve. Audit quality, like I said, that if you are missing out on any transaction, any disclosure requirement, applicability of any particular accounting standard, and you comply with that, when you fill up this form, it comes to your notice कि अगर अरे ये हम लोग नहीं कर रहे थे, अगर ये हमको करना है, then it becomes a improvement in your overall audit quality. So that is the importance with respect to audit documentation. SA 230, it says that it assists the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. It assists members of the engagement team for supervision. यहाँ पे अगर हम लोग देखते हैं तो as partners, as proprietors, आप supervise करते हैं, आप direct कर सकते हैं उनको, and to discharge their review responsibility in accordance with SA 220, which we saw earlier. ऐसे ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन जब करते हैं, ऑडिट प्लान, ऑडिट प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट, द चेकलिस्ट फॉर अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स एंड ऑल, इट enables the audit team to be accountable for its work. You also retain a record of matters of continuing significance to the future audits. Friends, this is another area where I feel that we need to improve, and as SMPs we can improve on our documentation, is that those items which are pending, which have not been able to resolve this year but has to be are continuing significance, that we should try and document them separately. And once we document them, like I said, in the next year, the team, once it goes through the file, it knows that अरे ये सब pending है और इसको हमको इस साल के audit में check करना है कि ये implement हुआ है कि नहीं. And definitely the last point, that is the audit documentation. आपका peer review होता है या income tax से कोई notice आता है या query आती है या GST से या कोई भी regulatory से कहीं पे भी कुछ requirement हो, तो आपका audit documentation can help you in justifying that आपने जो audit report, audit opinion दिया है true and fair view का, वो कोई गलत नहीं है, वो बराबर है. Timely preparation of audit documentation. We saw about audit program, the analysis, the issues memorandum, summaries of significant matters. Like I said, कि भाई जो इस साल pending matter है उसको अगर next year हम लोग proper एक document में 3 point 4 point जो भी है उसको लिख के रखते हैं, तो next year definitely it would help us. Assembly of the final audit file. Friends, I would over here ask one question, that how many of us would have, I'm talking of the March 20 audits which have been recently concluded, would have multiple trial balances for March 20 of their file, in the file of their clients. या even multiple tally data, tally अगर है या कुछ भी software है तो multiple data है या multiple trial balances है, multiple balance sheets है, they might be unsigned, but multiple balance sheets and all that are lying in the file. Let me tell you that first thing which I would request you suggest is कि ये सब जो extra documents, जो extra files है या papers है, उसको आप kindly destroy कर दीजिए, kindly shred कर दीजिए. Second thing is, I can again assure that in a majority of the cases, आपने जो balance sheet sign की है उसमें जो numbers है, certify जो आपने किए हैं, अगर आप client का data check करेंगे March 20 का, तो वो दोनों में definitely mismatch आएगा. Mismatch इसलिए आएगा because see, some of the working, some of the transactions, some of the entries that happens in the chartered accountant's office, and that also at the last minute. Something like a depreciation, something like a provision for current tax, provision for deferred tax. In case of partnership firms या LLPs, remuneration का जो amount होता है partner wise, that happens in the end. अभी ये सब एंड में होता है, और क्या होता है, इन दी कंप्लायंस डेडलाइन हमारा जो है उसको मीट करने के लिए पास ऑल दोज एंट्रीज एक्सेल में पूरा वर्किंग करते हैं, लिंक करके फाइल प्रिंट करके साइन ऑफ करके अपलोड करके भूल जाते हैं. नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस, नेक्स्ट ईयर जब हम लोग ऑडिट स्टार्ट करते हैं, एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम व्हाट हैपेंस इज ओपनिंग बैलेंस वेरिफिकेशन, विच इज द फर्स्ट थिंग विच वी डू व्हेन वी स्टार्ट द ऑडिट. ओपनिंग बैलेंस वेरिफिकेशन जब करते हैं तो जो साइंड डॉक्यूमेंट्स है, जो साइंड फिगर्स है, फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स है, और जो ओपनिंग बैलेंस, जो ट्रायल बैलेंस नेक्स्ट ईयर जनरेट होता है, वो दोनों में mismatch होते हैं. And when these mismatches happen, we spend 4 hours, 5 hours, 1 day, 2 day in just trying to match the opening balance that should be there considering the signed financials of the previous year. And it becomes more difficult if the audit team has changed. नेक्स्ट ईयर की ऑडिट टीम अगर चेंज हो गई है तो उसको पता नहीं होता है कि लास्ट ईयर के फाइल कहाँ पे है, लास्ट ईयर का फाइनल डेटा कौन सा है, एंट्रीज कहाँ से आई है, एंड देन देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम दैट गेट्स इन्वेस्टेड इन मैचिंग द ओपनिंग बैलेंस. अगेंस्ट दैट लेट अस से अभी आप अगर हाफ एन आवर भी इन्वेस्ट करेंगे, क्योंकि आपके अभी सब एंट्रीज आपके माइंड में है, सारी सॉफ्ट कॉपीज अवेलेबल है, एक्स्ट्रा सॉफ्ट कॉपीज आपने सब डिस्कार्ड कर दी है, तो जो फाइनल वर्किंग्स है, फाइनल सॉफ्ट कॉपीज है, उसके बेसिस पे आज की डेट में अगर आप अकाउंटिंग एंट्रीज करवा देते हैं क्लाइंट को, इफ इट इज एट योर ऑफिस यू डू इट, सेंड द डेटा टू देम, या तो उनका अभी करंट ईयर का 20-21 का भी कंटिन्यूअस डेटा है तो वहां पे जाके क्लोजिंग एंट्रीज डलवा दीजिए बाय विच द ओपनिंग बैलेंस प्रॉपर्ली कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो जाए 1 अप्रैल को, then it will save a lot of time of yours in the next year. Similarly, there are a lot of documents जो हमारे ईमेल में आते हैं, कभी कभी क्लाइंट व्हाट्सएप करके लास्ट मिनट होता है कि डोनेशन रिसीट है तो व्हाट्सएप करके भेज देते हैं. इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट ये सारे जो है सॉफ्ट कॉपीज, बिकॉज अ लॉट ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट्स गेट्स नाउ एक्सचेंज ऑन ईमेल एंड व्हाट्सएप एंड सॉफ्ट कॉपीज. इट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि वो जो ईमेल्स या व्हाट्सएप या जहाँ पे भी है उसको हम लोग सब इकट्ठा करके क्लाइंट के फोल्डर में उस हिसाब से वी डू द आर्काइविंग. एंड माय रिक्वेस्ट वुड बी दैट इवन देयर शुड बी अ स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड फाइल नेमिंग सिस्टम. नंबरिंग तो हमारे हार्ड कॉपीज में होता ही है, वी हैव द फाइल नंबर लिस्ट आल्सो, बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू द सॉफ्ट कॉपी, please ensure that you standardize the file naming system where you have the client code or whatever you might have. You might have the financial year as part of that, and you might have something like a donation or a ETG or whatever, and you have a standardized format of file naming for each type of document that is there in your hard drive or on your server. The reason being that next year when you want to search, otherwise कभी कभी क्या होता है वो ईमेल में स्कैन होके या व्हाट्सएप पे या कहीं पे डॉक्यूमेंट्स आते हैं तो उसमें नाम आता है ABCD %123 डैश डैश हाइफन हैशटैग और ऐसे सब नाम आते हैं, एंड देन व्हेन वी सर्च तो हम लोग को वो मिलता ही नहीं. So it is always important that we should try and have a standardized file naming system of the soft copies and a particular उसका storage का भी एक particular process होना चाहिए. And once this is done, it will become very very easy for you to retrieve documents in the subsequent year. और like I said, वो clients हमेशा हमारे पास आके ही बोलते हैं कि विशाल भाई आप ये दो डॉक्यूमेंट वो दे दो, आपके फाइल से जल्दी मिल जाएगा. At that point in time, you or your team will not have to run around to find out those documents. So when we talk of this timely preparation of audit documents, the assembly of the final audit file, this becomes something which is of utmost importance when we are planning to bring about audit efficiency and audit quality. Like I said कि आप अगर closing balance, closing entries, trial balance आप अभी sign off करके रख देते हो तो next year आपका substantial time बचेगा audit में. Avoid that mismatches, and that time you can utilize in either, so that would definitely bring your tax audit efficiency. At the same time you will be able to spend more time on certain transactions which require that time, and because you have saved that time you will be able to spend that. Retention of audit documentation, you need to retain audit document for 7 years from the date of your audit report. So अगर let us say March 20 का audit report आपने January 21 में sign किया है, January 21 से 7 years is what is the audit documentation retention requirement that is there. Ownership of audit documentation, definitely the ownership is of yours. Friends, I will share one more Excel file which is a checklist for a balance sheet, a particular client for a particular year. What happens is many times, like I said, again, this is the documentation requirement which can bring about a lot of audit efficiency with respect to SMPs. What we do in our office, ये जो checklist है, March end होते ही April beginning में, we send it to the client and we ask them to keep all the documents, prepare all the documents ready before they call us for audit. So if you look at through this, I'll just run through it. that definitely with respect to routine audit, vouchers and all books and ledger scrutiny of GL, all provisions and year-end entries are booked. ट्रायल बैलेंस ऑल बेसिक एंट्रीज शेयर कैपिटल अगर इंक्रीज इन शेयर कैपिटल हुआ है तो उसके रिलेटेड फॉर्म्स एडिशनल इश्यू ऑफ शेयर्स हुए तो वैल्यूएशन रिपोर्ट्स है शेयर एप्लीकेशन मनी अगर एनआरआई से नॉन रेसिडेंट से आया है तो फेमा कंप्लायंसेस क्या है उसके रिलेटेड जो है सब रेडी रखने का है एनुअल रिटर्न भी फाइल्ड विद आरओसी फॉर द ईयर 18-19 इन मार्च 20 अभी आपका 21 का है तो इट विल बी फॉर द फाइनेंशियल ईयर 19-20 in March 21. So this is the ROC return and signed copy. So similarly, this is with respect to share capital. Then you have with respect to reserves, क्या requirement है आपकी audit की, borrowings related क्या requirement है. So it is a twofold thing where the client is competent. He has a team, he has a accounts department or a full-time accountant. There the client can prepare, keep all documents ready or share all documents with you so that it becomes much more easy for you कि आप लोग जब ऑडिट में जाते हो तो एक ही बार में मैक्सिमम इसमें से वेरिफिकेशन हो जाए सी अदरवाइज व्हाट हैपेंस मेनी टाइम्स हम लोग वेरिफिकेशन ऑडिट जब होता है आर्टिकल स्टूडेंट्स भेजते हैं ऑडिट मैनेजर भेजते हैं वो लोग ऑडिट करके आते हैं हम लोग रिव्यू करते हैं हम लोग 5 क्वेश्चंस और देते हैं कि इसका क्या है इसका क्या है इसका क्या है अगेन इट गोज बैक टू द क्लाइंट दे गो बैक टू द क्लाइंट वो वापस उसमें 3-4-5 कंप्लायंस करके भेजते हैं उसमें से फिर से क्वेरी आती है फिर से हम लोग भेजते हैं एंड द टू एंड फ्रो हैपेंस एंड when we talk of SMPs and SMEs, normally these are happening in the last days and we don't have that much of time to do a to and fro. Such an Excel file, what would happen is ये एक आपका पूरा checklist बन जाएगा. So when your team is going is at the client's place for audit या शायद आपके ऑफिस में audit होता है but वो जब audit करते हैं तो उसको पता है कि क्या क्या requirement for what type of the audit task, what are the documents that are required और वो उसी हिसाब से पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट वेरीफाई करके आपकी फाइल बना देंगे या तो क्लाइंट से सारे डॉक्यूमेंट्स मंगवा के या क्लाइंट्स को बोलेंगे आप ये सब डॉक्यूमेंट्स आप हमको काइंडली मेल कर दीजिए व्हाट हैपन आपके पास जब आता है तब ये पूरा चेकलिस्ट है ये पूरा आपका रेडी हो जाता है सो अनसिक्योर्ड लोन्स है तो उसका टर्म्स कंडीशन सो दिस इज अ चेकलिस्ट विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू ईच एंड एवरी आइटम ऑफ द बैलेंस शीट that would be there not just balance sheet including profit or say even for a capital work in progress तो कब के है कितना पुराना है ये बैलेंस एट द ईयर एंड CWIP परचेज ऑर्डर अगर आपने एडवांसेस दिए कैपिटल एसेट्स में तो उसके परचेज ऑर्डर रिलेटेड क्या है एंड वेदर दैट रिक्वायर्स एनी डिस्क्लोजर व्हेन इट कम्स टू कंपनी ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ द अनएग्जीक्यूटेड कैपिटल कमिटमेंट्स जो रिक्वायरमेंट है अपना शेड्यूल 3 का डिस्क्लोजर का तो वेदर दैट इज एनी सच थिंग व्हिच इज रिक्वायर्ड investment. So this is a total list of all the items of the assets and liabilities. So you can have a very similar checklist in your office, which would not only bring about, again I'm saying repeatedly, that it should bring about audit efficiency, but also audit quality, because the whole team, जितना भी जूनियर बंदा हो उसको पता है कि ये ट्रांजैक्शन या इसके लिए मेरे को ये सब डिटेल्स चेक करनी है इसको डॉक्यूमेंट करने हैं एंड इफ यू सी उसके रिलेटेड है कि भाई इंटरिम ऑडिट में किया है टू टेक एज एप्लीकेबल फाइनल ऑडिट में किया है डेट्स ऑन विच डॉक्यूमेंट्स आर रिक्वायर्ड डेट ऑन विच डॉक्यूमेंट्स सो दिस बिकम्स यू कैन ऐड और रिमूव कॉलम्स बट देन दिस बिकम्स अ टोटल चेकलिस्ट विथ रिस्पेक्ट टू योर फाइनेंशियल ऑडिट्स these are annexures also के contingent liabilities related क्या क्या details आपको मंगवानी है so in such a way investment fixed deposits वगैरह है cash balance certificate है कारो रिलेटेड जो चेकलिस्ट है फ्रेंड्स दिस माइट सीम टू बी अ वेरी लॉन्ग कि भाई विशाल भाई इतना कौन भरेगा बट इफ यू लुक एट इट दैट दिस इज अ internal control mechanism that we are actually putting in our office to ensure that nothing gets missed out which is very important from an auditor's perspective so this is what I meant by having audit checklist assembly of the final audit file and once we do this a lot of audit documentation like I mentioned in the beginning friends that a lot of things our audit funds you do it मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा हूँ आप लोग नहीं करते हैं but the issue is that हम लोग जब audit file देखते हैं उसके documents देखते हैं तो उसमें अपने को कोई supporting नहीं मिलता है या कोई linking नहीं मिलता है with respect to the financial statements the moment you have all these checklists in place and like I said you make it part of your firm philosophy of your firm system कि इसको मेरे को implement करना ही करना है and this is part of my audit process first year I will tell you definitely difficulty hogi but you can start on the first year with respect to of let us say 25% of the clients which are the large clients in terms of turnover in terms of transaction maybe borrowing jiska zyada hai ya something like that and then gradually roll out to the other clients but I will share all these files with the branch who would in turn share it with you And I believe that this should this would help you as a starting point, as a flag off point for start a proper audit documentation. Friends, the next standard that I would discuss is about SA 260, that is communication with those charged with governance. अगर मैं शॉर्ट में बोलूं तो इसका मतलब ऐसा है कि अपने को क्लाइंट मैनेजमेंट के साथ मीटिंग करनी है, कम्युनिकेशन अपने को क्लाइंट के मैनेजमेंट के साथ करना है. फ्रेंड्स, many times I have seen that SMPs, SMEs, ये जब ऑडिट की रिलेशनशिप होती है तो उनके अकाउंटेंट लेवल पे ही बहुत कुछ हमारा डिस्कशन होता है. कहीं पे नॉन कंप्लायंस हुआ है तो वो रेक्टिफाई कर देता है, और उसी लेवल पे मे बी हमारे ऑडिट टीम और अकाउंटेंट लेवल पे सॉल्व हो जाता है, या हमारे लेवल पे जब आता है मतलब प्रोप्राइटर या पार्टनर लेवल पे, तो हम लोग उसके अकाउंटेंट के साथ बैठ के पूरा सॉल्व कर देते हैं, बिकॉज इट्स अ लास्ट मिनट रश एंड वी डोंट हैव टाइम टू डिस्कस विद द मैनेजमेंट. But I believe that if there are significant matters that are arising out of the audit, it becomes our duty as well as our responsibility to communicate with those charged with governance. So TCWG, जो short में हम लोग typically बोलते हैं, would mean the proprietor or partner or the managing director or the director of the client firm, company, entity, जो भी है, उसके साथ we must set up a meeting. We should discuss with them, because I will take a very simple thing that whatever are the changes in laws that are there or that are expected to be there, in such cases it becomes our duty to intimate the client कि ये आपको applicable है. Let us say CARO 2020, wherever in case of any client it is applicable, it has been deferred. But wherever the changes are there, we should immediately have a meeting with the client and say कि CARO में change आ रहा है, ये एक साल अभी पोस्टपोन हुआ है इसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, बट वंस इट इज डन, these are the additional points that are required to be reported by us as an auditor, और उसके लिए आपको ये सिस्टम या ये डॉक्यूमेंट्स आपको उसके लिए सेटअप करने पड़ेंगे. There might be certain way of accounting that the client के accountant वो एंट्रीज पास कर रहा है. सी आई विल गिव अनदर सिंपल एग्जांपल कि टीडीएस की एंट्रीज हो रही है, तो सम ऑफ द अकाउंटेंट्स वो क्या करते हैं, वो एक्सपेंस का बिल पूरा का पूरा बुक करते हैं एंड सेपरेट एंट्री टीडीएस की करते हैं. सो देयर आर टू एंट्रीज दैट अपीयर फॉर द सेम ट्रांजैक्शन. एज एन ऑडिटर व्हेन वी डू टैक्स ऑडिट, मे बी वी रियलाइज कि ये जो इसको एक से कोरिलेट करना है, इट बिकम्स वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट, द एक्सपेंस बुकिंग एंड द टीडीएस डिडक्शन. एंड देयरफॉर वी माइट सजेस्ट कि एक कॉम्पोजिट एंट्री ही पास हो जाए, बाय विच जब वाउचिंग हो रहा है या स्क्रूटिनी हो रहा है, तब एट द सेम पॉइंट इन टाइम वी आर एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई कि इसमें टीडीएस हुआ है या नहीं हुआ है. So maybe you discuss with the accountant, or I would say accountant agrees. Even if the accountant agrees, it becomes our responsibility to discuss with the client and ensure that we update the client that this is a suggestion that we have given. The accountant has agreed. Maybe the client would say, विशाल भाई अभी दिसंबर आ गया है तो हम लोग 1 Jan से इसको implement करेंगे या 1 April से करेंगे, और whatever it is, and then we agree that ठीक है सर, आप पिछले कोई एंट्रीज चेंज मत करिए, 1 January से आप इसको implement करिए. So that becomes a value addition from your side, that this is where you have added value to the whole process. Another thing is, like, let us say e-invoicing under GST, that is presently applicable for entities above 100 crores, having turnover in excess of 100 crores. We are all aware that the way digitization is happening and the way the government is moving, this might for 5 crores या 10 crores, 15 crores काफी immediately आ जाना चाहिए, maybe in the next 1 year or 2 years, right? So it becomes important for us to communicate with the client कि ये e-invoicing start हो गया है and काफी जल्दी ये small entities पे भी आ जाएगा या आ जाने की संभावना है. So the client needs to gear up. उसका टैली का सिस्टम है, तो he or she needs to gear up कि भाई इसमें जो उसके अकाउंटिंग मास्टर्स है, उसके सेल्स रिलेटेड जो मेथड ऑफ अकाउंटिंग है, vendor masters hai, GST masters hai, product masters hai, all these things needs to be set right to ensure that there is a proper bridge or there is a proper transition that happens between the existing system and the future e-invoicing. Now let me tell you friends, how many of us, now I look at this as a professional opportunity, to be very frank, that when we talk of the smaller towns and cities, we would have n number of clients, n number of businesses which would come in the category of, let us say, turnover of 5 crores to 100 crores. Now we already have the GST e-invoicing platform, which the large companies are using. As a professional, we can definitely spend a few days in understanding. If we don't have any such clients presently, we have to definitely we can spend a few days. हम लोग समझते हैं कि ई इनवॉइसिंग पोर्टल पे इसको कैसे कैसे करना है, और अभी हमारे क्लाइंट्स के जो टैली की एंट्रीज है, टैली का सॉफ्टवेयर है, मास्टर है, उसको अगर मेरे को ये ई इनवॉइसिंग पोर्टल के साथ सिंक्रोनाइज करना है, तो व्हाट इज माय प्रिपेयर्डनेस? Let me tell you, friends, the clients would not wait for even one day for this transition. अगर उसको एप्लीकेबल होता है एंड 2 दिन 3 दिन में अगर आप उसको ब्रिज कर देते हैं, ट्रांजिट कर देते हैं, he would be extremely happy. None of the businesses in this situation wants any disruption with respect to their business. And अगर at that point in time, अगर ये जब implement होता है, let us say 5 crore की threshold या जो भी threshold आती है, at that point in time, if you as a professional on whom he banks upon, as a friend, philosopher, guide, as an auditor, if you tell them at that point in time कि ठीक है अभी आपके सिस्टम में ये चेंज करना है, ये प्रोडक्ट मास्टर लाना है, ये करना है, वो करना है, इसमें भी 10-15 दिन लग जाएंगे और तब तक आपका इनवॉइसिंग में डिफिकल्टी होगी, एंड इफ ही फेसेस दैट डिफिकल्टी, देन आई अश्योर यू ही वुड बी एक्सट्रीमली अपसेट विथ यू. ही विल टेल यू, अरे सर आपको तो पता था लार्ज कंपनीज में आ गई है और आपको पता था ये आना है, तो आपने पहले से बोल दिया होता, हम लोग को ट्रेन कर दिया होता, इक्विप कर दिया होता, तो हम लोग आज रेडी हो जाते. So I would say even under this standard, it becomes important that we keep on communicating, interacting with our client. I would suggest that साल में एक बार with the top management, the management which is responsible for signing of the financial statements, उसके साथ साल में एक बार आपको मीटिंग जरूर करनी है. जो भी मीटिंग के आउटकम है, सी नॉर्मली एज प्रोफेशनल्स आई एम श्योर कि अगर यहाँ से कोई भी प्रोफेशनल कोई क्लाइंट से मीटिंग करेगा तो वो ब्लैंक तो ऐसा नहीं जाएगा कि अभी मेरे को आपके चाय पीनी है और वहाँ पे पहुंच जाएगा. डेफिनेटली वो उसके ऑडिट टीम को है या टैक्स टीम है या जो भी है, उसको बोलेंगे कि भाई ये क्लाइंट रिलेटेड आप 4-5 इश्यूज जो भी है where we are finding difficulty with respect to an audit or with respect to a particular process या the way in which accounting is done, या वो क्लाइंट को क्या क्या रेगुलेटरी चेंजेस आए हैं जो एप्लीकेबल होता है, तो आप वो 2-3 पॉइंट्स बना के आप जाइए क्लाइंट के साथ, आप डिस्कस करिए एंड डॉक्यूमेंट दैट पॉइंट. वो पॉइंट्स जो है आप ईमेल कर दीजिए पहले से, discuss that, write the response and file that. That becomes your documentation under this standard. I don't think it is difficult at all. It's just that you need to make it, build it as a part of the process. So again, friends, coming back to that e-invoicing, like I said, I look at it as a professional opportunity, and those chartered accountants who start working on it, मैं तो बोलता हूँ आप पहले 2-3 client का free में करिए, because that would be learning for you also. But after that, you can start charging, and I am pretty confident that you will find a lot of CA firms who would not be prepared, and once this implementation या applicability comes, this threshold comes, even the other CA firms would be recommending your name कि भाई ये फर्म है, उसको अभी पता है पूरा फटाफट कैसे करना है about the master and all, and they would be recommending, and then you can definitely charge some fees for such assignment that you are doing. And if you start the race first, then definitely the possibility of you winning the race is much high. And therefore I would request, please look into this area as a professional opportunity, though it might be a short term, but definitely it is an opportunity where you can build up on your practice. Also, continuing this, please ensure that you regularly meet your client. Another important aspect is, see, when you regularly meet your client, हम लोग जब small towns and cities में जाते हैं तो बहुत बार ऐसा होता है कि भाई वेयर द क्लाइंट, हम लोग का ऐसा लगता है कि भाई इफ आई इंक्रीज द फीस, वो क्लाइंट मेरे को छोड़ के कोई और सीए के पास चला जाएगा. यू नो, दैट इज अ नॉर्मल टेंडेंसी which we have in our mind, the fear which we have in my mind. I have seen, friends, that where you add value, the client will not leave you. This is my experience. So let us say every year you keep on meeting your client, you explain to him कि ये value addition किया आपने, ये process improvement कराया. It might be in accounting, he might not be aware of it, but when you interact with him, when you discuss with him, he will understand. Abhi jaisa, I will give a very simple example. Ye ITC credit GST में, it is only when the vendor उसके return file करता है कि आपको आपके client को input credit मिलता है. Now my question here as an auditor would be that what is the system that you have set in place for your client to ensure that minimum of credit is lost? See, or if there is a vendor who is filing the return late, तो मतलब क्रेडिट उसकी 1 month डिले हो जाती है. 1 month डिले हो जाती है तो पैसा जो है अभी तो आपके क्लाइंट को भरना पड़ रहा है, जो नेक्स्ट ईयर उसका रिकवर होगा बाय वे ऑफ द क्रेडिट. In such a situation, there is a loss of interest for 1 month. So whether you have a mechanism in place where you interact, where you report to the client कि सर ये आप देखिए कि ये एक वेंडर है जिसका रिटर्न फाइल वो नहीं किया है, इसके लिए आपको इतना लॉस हुआ है, आपने तो उसको पूरा पैसे दे दिए बट इतना आपका क्रेडिट आईटीसी क्रेडिट का लॉस हुआ है, और यू में से कि ये वेंडर जो है वो टाइमली रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करता है जिसके लिए आपको 1 महीने का इंटरेस्ट का लॉस हो रहा है. सी दिस इज द वैल्यू एडिशन यू आर गिविंग टू द क्लाइंट. There might be other professionals, I would say, or maybe non-professionals also, who are doing just compliance. They are not adding any value. They are not meeting the clients. Once you add value, आप ऐसे ऐसे points clients के साथ discuss करेंगे. I can assure you that there would be very, very few clients who would be leaving you when you ask for an increase in fees, because you are adding value. You are ensuring that their business grows with your value addition. So this particular standard, though it might seem इतना बड़ा नाम है, communication with those charged with governance, इसमें क्या करना है? I believe that the mantra is keep regularly meeting your client, keep adding value, give them new thoughts, new ideas by which their business grows, and I can assure you in turn you will also grow. So when you go for asking for an increase in fees, he would be more than happy because he knows, he is aware of the value add that you have done. Rather than thinking अरे ये तो आप हर साल साइन ही करते हो, आपने को क्या वैल्यू ऐड किया है, कुछ किया नहीं है, and at that point in time you go and explain कि मैंने ये किया है. It's better that you be proactive. You discuss first about all the value add, make it a part of your process, and whenever the fee increase comes every 2 years, 3 years, whatever, he would be more than happy to give that. The next we talk is about the risk. हम लोग इसको शॉर्ट में ROM बोलते हैं, risk of material misstatement. Friends, here also SA 315, the documentation becomes important. My request to all my friends over here is that please ensure, please start. I know SMPs करते नहीं है, but here my request is please start making a permanent file. हम लोग जब audit पढ़ रहे थे, तब हमको पता है there was a permanent file and there was a working file, right? But उसके बाद जब practice में आए, implement करने का आया, तब we have stopped having a permanent file, और we feel वो permanent file, working file सब एक ही होता है और सब कुछ एक में ही होता है. Let me tell you that making a permanent file again will bring in about a lot of audit efficiency. Permanent file में क्या रहता है, जो हम लोग पढ़े, definitely memorandum articles, कोई important contracts हो, board resolutions हो, financial statements, signed financial statements of the entity year on year, it is filed in that. Tax audit reports होते हैं, partnership firms है या LLP है तो उनकी partnership deeds होते हैं. Partner can, you can have the KYC of the partners and the firm also as part of your permanent file. All these file is kept permanent. I will tell you in our office the numbering system that we have, that जो सभी offices में होती है, there is a client code. Let us say for X client I have a code of 101, उसका code है, और 101 के बाद में हम लोग 0 लगाते हैं, तो when that 0 is there, that 0 indicates it is the permanent file. तो अगर कोई और client है जिसका 110 है client code, तो 110 के बाद जो 0 आता है वो उसका परमानेंट फाइल रहता है, और सारी 0 नंबर्ड वाली, द लास्ट डिजिट 0 परमानेंट फाइल इज स्टोर्ड सेपरेटली इन अ सेपरेट रैक, क्योंकि उसके साथ छेड़छाड़ नहीं होनी चाहिए. दैट इज अ परमानेंट फाइल. वी आल्सो हैव व्हाट आई कैन से इज अ परमानेंट फाइल अपडेट रिकॉर्ड. अगर आप ये देखेंगे आपके स्क्रीन पे कि परमानेंट फाइल में जब भी कुछ भी मॉडिफिकेशंस होता है, एडिशन होता है, या उसमें से किसी ने निकाला है, एक्चुअली परमानेंट फाइल के कबर्ड अलग होती है और वो लॉक एंड की में होती है, जिसकी चाबी पार्टनर या प्रोप्राइटर के पास होनी चाहिए, सो दैट एनीबडी वांट्स अ परमानेंट फाइल, ही और शी इन योर ऑफिस शुड टेक योर परमिशन, शुड टेक द की फ्रॉम यू एंड देन ओनली ओपन द परमानेंट फाइल. तो इसमें अगर आप मार्च 20 के फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स ऐड कर रहे हैं तो आपके पास आएगा, की लेके जाएगा, परमानेंट फाइल लेके आएगा क्लाइंट की, ही विल अपडेट कि इसमें मार्च 20 के ऑडिटेड फाइनेंशियल्स और टैक्स ऑडिट रिपोर्ट मैंने ऐड किया है. और ये जो लिस्ट है, नॉर्मली क्या होता है, हमारा जो फाइल होता है उसमें जो इनसाइड फ्रंट कवर होता है, इसमें भी पेस्ट दिस पेज, एंड सो दिस बिकम्स अ रेगुलर पेज, और यू कैन इवन फाइल इट ऑन द राइट साइड, द फर्स्ट पंच करके फर्स्ट ये, एंड एवरी रेफरेंस, एवरी एडिशंस के पार्टनरशिप डीड है. पार्टनरशिप डीड वगैरह क्या होता है फ्रेंड्स, दैट नॉर्मली जिस साल चेंज होता है उस साल की वर्किंग फाइल में हम लोग फाइल कर देते हैं, एंड देन वो 2 साल 3 साल के बाद वर्किंग फाइल हम लोग चाहे दूसरा ऑफिस में, वॉट एवर इज द स्टोरेज सिस्टम दैट वी हैव, वो उसमें चला जाता है. एंड देन व्हेन वी एक्चुअली वांट दैट डीड, वी डोंट नो इन विच फाइल इट इज, राइट. सिमिलरली modifications, alterations to the memorandum articles हो, कुछ भी हो. So it is always better to have a permanent file जिसमें आप ये सारे records, important contracts है, understandings है, कुछ भी है, all that you can keep as part of the permanent file. So also in the permanent file, you should have some of these things which are mentioned, right, about the entity and its environment. समझिए क्या है कि भाई ये particular entity जो है trading unit है या ये मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है तो इंजीनियरिंग है, केमिकल है, you have a broad structure, उसके कौन कौन डायरेक्टर्स है, क्या क्या लोकेशंस है, उसके रिलेटेड व्हाट आर द रेगुलेटरी कंप्लायंसेस व्हिच आर रिक्वायर्ड, कि वेदर पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल बोर्ड की एनओसी चाहिए नहीं चाहिए, फैक्ट्री लाइसेंसेस, पीएफ, सो देयर इज द मास्टर लिस्ट ऑफ द एक्टिविटीज और द डिटेलिंग with respect to the clients, the entities internal control कौन सी सिस्टम है, टैली है, एसएपी है या और कुछ है, controls for the audit, so all these things, and that helps you. Who are the important people in that organization from the top? Managing director कौन है, managing partner कौन है, CFO कौन है, independent directors है तो वो कौन है, उनके company secretary कौन है, if you are not doing the secretarial work तो वो कौन है. You have all this list, right? Complexity of transactions, trading है, export. So there are n number of things. I'll show you a format also where you can put this. What happens is that once this is documented, it is part of your permanent file. मैंने जैसे बोला audit plan आपका जब होता है, when you ask your team to fill up the audit plan, what happens is that they can refer to the permanent file. When they refer to the permanent file, all these things, ये 6-7 पेज जो भी है वो पूरे लिस्टिंग वहां पे रहते हैं. Everything is listed out. Everything is listed out, and that audit team is fully equipped with having, हम लोग जो typically बोलते हैं, knowledge of the entity for which they are going to audit, and उसके basis पे they are also able to evaluate what is the risk of material misstatement, and by understanding the entity, by understanding the environment that that entity functions in. अभी जैसा मैं बोलता हूँ simple है कि भाई COVID आया, right? So now what would happen if it would have been something an airline industry? तो आपको तुरंत पता चल जाएगा कि भाई कोविड में हॉस्पिटैलिटी इंडस्ट्री है, एयरलाइन इंडस्ट्री है, सो दीज आर द वंस व्हिच वुड गेट impacted, and you know that your risk of material misstatement in such cases is higher, right? At the same time, if it is a entity, let us say it is a fuel pump, petrol pump है, so it was under essential services which never closed. Pharmaceutical या chemical unit है, it was under essential services which never closed. So in such cases you would know कि भाई उसका risk, business risk जो है, going concern related जो भी है, उसमें the risk of is minimal, and that is how you can plan your audit, and it would help you in your overall audit. Materiality in planning and performing an audit, SA 320. Friends, here also I will discuss about audit efficiency and audit quality. पहले भी हमने डिस्कस किया कि मे बी व्हाट माइट बी हैपनिंग इन मेनी केसेस कि हम लोग जब ऑडिट स्टार्ट होता है टीम को बोलते हैं भाई आप ऑडिट चालू कर दो. एंड विद रिस्पेक्ट टू स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस, वी डू नॉट फोकस सो मच ऑन द मटीरियलिटी. तो वो टीम जब जाती है तो हम लोग देखते हैं, एंड आई हैव सीन ऑल्सो, कि वो कैश वाउचिंग करते हैं तो हम लोग बोलते हैं एवरी 4th वाउचर ले लो, या कोई भी सैम्पलिंग स्टाइल होती है. तो व्हाट दे विल डू, वो 200 रुपए के वाउचर भी चेक करेंगे, 50 रुपए के भी चेक करेंगे, क्योंकि वो ऑडिट सैम्पलिंग में आपने बोला है वैसा आता है. बट नाउ व्हाट अबाउट मटीरियलिटी? अगर वो 500 रुपए कैपिटल टू रेवेन्यू है, या लेटर से वो अकाउंटिंग हेड स्टाफ वेलफेयर में नहीं जाके एंटरटेनमेंट एक्सपेंस में जाना चाहिए, are you saying that the financial statements are materially misstated because of that 500 rupees? If you ask me, no. So again, materiality is something which SMPs must, it is a standard on audit. So if you bring about materiality in the whole audit process, it is not that you are not complying with the standards on audit. On the contrary, you are complying with the standards on audit. We have put up Excel tools on the WIRC website, where one tool is with respect to materiality. I have it here. Let me see. Yeah. So I'll just show that let us say this is the entity statutory audit for the year 1920 and materiality level fixation. In this case all amount are in rupees lakhs. तो मार्च 20 का ऑडिट है तो आप मार्च 19 और मार्च 18 के फिगर्स ले रहे हैं. टोटल एसेट्स, प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट इक्विपमेंट प्लस इंटेंजिबल, मतलब अदर देन नॉन करंट एसेट्स, फिक्स्ड एसेट्स जो हम लोग टिपिकली बोलते हैं, रेवेन्यू फ्रॉम ऑपरेशंस, प्रॉफिट बिफोर टैक्स, बिफोर एक्सेप्शनल. तो ये 2 साल का है और आपने एवरेज ले लिया. देन यू आर डिसाइडिंग कि भाई मेरे को मटेरियलिटी का वेटेज परसेंटेज क्या देना है फॉर ईच एलिमेंट. मैंने 0.5%, 1%, 3%. तो इसके बेसिस पे आई एम कमिंग टू मटेरियलिटी विच इज लोएस्ट ऑफ द अबव. सी आई हैव टू कीप द रिस्क ऑफ मटेरियल मिसस्टेटमेंट एट मिनिमम, राइट. सो इसमें से लीस्ट क्या था तो 5 लाख आया, which means that 5 lakhs becomes the materiality in case of this entity which had a turnover of 50 crores in March 19, right. तो 5 lakhs materiality आई, but now like I said कि मेरे को risk कम लेना है, as an auditor I have to be conservative. मैं इसका 75% लेता हूँ as my performance materiality, which comes to 3.75 lakhs. So what does this mean? That anything either individually or collectively more than 3.75 lakhs is what I need to report or take cognizance of. Now यहाँ पे मैंने 75% लिया, ऐसा कोई रूल नहीं है, स्टैंडर्ड में लिखा हुआ या कहीं पे भी कि आपको 75 लेना है. You can take anywhere between 50 to 90%, it is your choice, but I would suggest that you should keep this constant as a firm कि भाई आप सारे क्लाइंट्स में आप ये थ्रेशोल्ड जो है, जो थ्रेशोल्ड मीन्स ये एसेट्स है, रेवेन्यू है, प्रॉफिट है, उसका आप क्या परसेंटेज वेटेज जो 0.5%, 1%, 3% है उसको स्टैंडर्डाइज कर दीजिए. ये परफॉर्मेंस मटेरियलिटी का जो रेशियो है उसको स्टैंडर्डाइज कर दीजिए. एंड दिस इज ट्रिवियलिटी. ट्रिवियलिटी इज दैट मिस स्टेटमेंट बिलो दिस मे नॉट बी इवन अक्यूमुलेटेड. सो व्हेन आई से अक्यूमुलेटेड 3.75 मैंने क्या बोला कि भाई आपके आइदर इंडिविजुअली और कलेक्टिवली ऑल ट्रांजैक्शंस मिला के अगर 3,75,000 क्रॉस होते हैं, so that is where you need to bring cognizance, and if those are not rectified then you have to bring about an audit qualification or emphasis disclaimer, whatever it might be. But in this case 5,000 is the amount. Again I am saying इसमें 1% लिया, it can be anywhere between 1% to 5% depending on your risk appetite and the ROMM with respect to that audit. So 1% I have 5,000. So that means anything below 5,000 is something which you can ignore altogether, because 5,000 मिला के ऐसे कितने मिसमैचेस होंगे कि मिला के आपका 3.75 lakhs आएगा. In case it is there, that means the total books of account are incorrect. Typically अगर हम लोग देखने जाए तो. So 5,000 is the amount which is coming as a triviality in this case. So what does this mean? This means that typically I can ask my team to ignore all vouchers or transactions which are below 5,000 rupees. तो जब वाउचिंग करते हैं, वाउचिंग में आई वुड से कि भाई आप जब ऑडिट सैम्पलिंग कर रहे हो तब आप 5,000 के ऊपर जितने ट्रांजैक्शन है आप उसका ही सैम्पलिंग करो, नॉट एनीथिंग बिलो दैट, राइट. सो व्हाट वुड हैपन व्हेन आई से कि भाई आप टॉप 100 वाउचर्स ले लो. व्हेन आई से टॉप 100 वाउचर्स तो 5,000 के ऊपर के लेंगे, या if I am taking a sampling of on a percentage basis या on a every 5th voucher या whatever, and I say that you have to ignore all vouchers which are below 5,000 rupees, what would happen कि वो छोटे 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 vouchers सब निकल जाएंगे, and with the same amount of time but having all vouchers above 5,000 rupees, I would actually be increasing the percentage of vouching which I am doing with respect to the total transactions of that entity, right. So let us say if I am supposed to vouch 10 transactions, of which 2 transactions are of 1 lakh and the rest 8 transactions are less than 500 rupees, then in that case the amount that I would be vouching would typically be something like a 2,04,000 or. But the same 10 transactions when I put as a threshold and I tell all above 5,000 rupees, then automatically मेरे वो 2 lakhs वाले तो आएंगे, but वो 500 वाले सब 5,000 से replace हो जाएंगे from the books of account, and I would, instead of 2,04,000 same number of vouchers, I would be doing a vouching of now 2,40,000. So that is how we can bring about an improvement in the audit efficiency and the audit quality by bringing in the materiality standard into picture. So this is also what I believe as a small and medium practitioner, this is something which is very, very easy to implement. Again, मैं homework दे देता हूँ आपको. We said that you will start with the engagement letter to prepare in the month of March. सारे March 21 के आप engagement letters बना देंगे. जो ऑडिट चेकलिस्ट मैंने दिया था, एक्सेल फाइल पूरा दिखाया था, वो भी आप रेडी कर देंगे क्लाइंट्स को. आप यू विल मेल इट टू देम मे बी इन द मंथ ऑफ मार्च और इन द मंथ ऑफ अप्रैल. मटीरियलिटी की ये जो शीट है वो भी आप हर एक क्लाइंट की आप बना देंगे for March 21, taking the audited numbers of March 20 and March 19, put it in the format, have your own benchmarks, finding out materiality and ensuring that that materiality printout is kept in mind when the audit plan comes to your table for approval. Please make this part of your process. As a leader, do not send anybody for audit without getting the audit plan signed. And when you sign the audit plan, the audit materiality should also accompany the audit plan with you. एक बार ये आपका प्रोसेस सेट हो जाएगा, आई अश्योर यू वो एवरी टाइम आपकी टीम आपको वो पूरा वैसे बंच बना के ही आपके अप्रूवल के लिए रखेगी. मेक इट अ पार्ट ऑफ योर प्रैक्टिस. आई अश्योर यू इट विल बिकम अ नॉर्मल फिनोमेना. Audit evidence, inspection, observation, external confirmation, recalculation, all these things we do. All these procedures we have always done, but it is important to document that कि क्या क्या किया है, किसने किया है. So like I said, as part of the audit plan, as part of the audit progress report, this would start getting documented. धीरे धीरे आपकी audit file में ये सब build up होते जाएगा. See what we say, inspection like a physical verification of stock. आप अगर ऑडिट प्लान में बनाते हैं कभी 31 मार्च को इसका स्टॉक वेरिफिकेशन करना है, ऑडिट प्लान बनता है, टीम डिसाइड होती है, आप साइन ऑफ करते हैं, उसका ऑडिट प्रोग्रेस रिपोर्ट बनता है that these dates the physical verification 31 मार्च को हुआ था. So that is the initial documentation. और उसके supporting में verification, inventory verification report is automatically put as part of the audit process, audit documentation. And if you remember, I had prepared, given you an audit checklist. उसमें भी अगर आप देखेंगे inventories में जब जाएंगे तो audit task is inventory physical verification or document required is a physical verification report signed by the client, maybe your team or maybe the internal auditor, whosoever is present at that physical verification. तो ये आप 3-4 documents अगर diligently आप follow करेंगे, I can assure you that 80-90% of the basic documentation which a small and medium enterprise, small and medium practitioner, should keep, automatically आपकी file build up होते जाएगी and you would be much more comfortable when it comes to the standards on audit. Friends, next we move is the external confirmations. How much time? Fine. So when we talk of external confirmations, यहाँ पे भी दोस्तों क्या होता है कि on behalf of the client हम लोग empathize करने लगते हैं कि ये छोटा क्लाइंट है, अभी कहाँ कंफर्मेशन के लिए भेजे, बैंक कंफर्मेशन के लिए कौन जाएगा, एफडी का लियन है कि नहीं, अभी उसको इतना छोटा है तो मैंने एफडी भी फिजिकली देखी है तो उसमें अभी क्या पूछने का, अभी उसके पास टाइम नहीं है, आदमी नहीं है. तो उनके बिहाफ पे we ourselves start giving the reasons. But let me tell you that when a standards on audit requires you for an external confirmation, why should you be empathetic towards that particular client? मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा हूं कि आप सारे डेटर, सारे क्रेडिटर, सबके कंफर्मेशन भेजिए बाय विच वो क्लाइंट आपको छोड़ के भाग जाएगा. मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा हूं. मैं ऐसा बोल रहा हूं कि एटलीस्ट स्टार्ट द प्रोसेस. Bank balance confirmation. See, we all know that confirmation is a third party confirmation, right? So बैंक जब अपने लेटर हेड पे या अपने उसके भी एक स्टैंडर्ड बैंक का फॉर्मेट होता ही है जो वो प्रिंट करके साइन स्टैम्प करके आपको दे देता है. My only humble submission or suggestion, friends, here is please start this process. पहले साल आपको डिफिकल्टी होगी, but next साल when you start repeatedly saying that, it will definitely happen. अंडरस्टैंड के क्लाइंट को क्या डिफिकल्टी है. क्लाइंट का बंदा बैंक में तो रोज जाता होगा या एवरी ऑल्टरनेट डे जाता होगा. देन व्हाई कांट ही गेट अ बैलेंस कंफर्मेशन एज ऑन 31st March फॉर यू व्हिच इज साइंड एंड स्टैम्प्ड सेपरेटली. व्हाई कांट ही गेट अ लियन सर्टिफिकेट और अ क्लीन सर्टिफिकेट विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट्स दैट ही माइट बी हैविंग विद दैट बैंक फॉर यू. इट इज वेरी मच पॉसिबल. बस आप थोड़ा फर्म रहिए, आप इंसिस्ट करिए तो आपका वो कंफर्मेशन आ जाएंगी एज फार एज बैंक्स आर कंसर्न. And that is also building up to your documentation with respect to SA 505. With respect to loan confirmations, again, जो related party loans होती है inter company within the group, within the family, I don't see any challenge why those loan confirmations you cannot have signed by both the parties, or in majority of the cases we do take, so that is fine. When it comes to confirmations from the receivables and the payables, my suggestion is that don't take a full list, take a sample, and you can be very selective as far as the sampling is concerned. Like I will say, you can pick up the top 3 parties where maximum volume of transactions with respect to purchase and sales are happening, or you can select those parties जिसमें non-moving balances है, कि opening balance है वही continue हो रहा है, receivable है या payable है, कुछ भी है, and वो non-moving है तो उसका आप confirmation मंगवाइए. Third exceptional item can be as an auditor कि subsequent bill का collection आ गया है या payment हो गया है. So what I'm saying is कि समझिए आपका कोई invoice है जो जुलाई अगस्त में रेज हुआ है, वो आउटस्टैंडिंग है, बट सितंबर अक्टूबर नवंबर में इनवॉइस जो है वो जो रेज हुआ है उसका पेमेंट हो गया, या तो उसका कलेक्शन आ गया है, बट वो जुलाई अगस्त का स्टिल पेंडिंग है, और आप जब देख रहे हैं तो उसका आप कंफर्मेशन मंगवाए कि वो जुलाई के अगस्त के कंफर्मेशन में कोई लफड़ा है क्या. Another exceptional point is where bill to bill payment is not being received or being done. Friends, these are areas where frauds have been identified, and especially with a lot of net banking transactions happening. And again, during this lockdown period, I'm saying April 20 onwards, there is a lot of net banking that people have switched to. And in such cases, chances of fraudulent activities happening by the accountant, by somebody else in the organization is relatively higher. And when you ask for this confirmation, जहाँ पे bill to bill, I am not saying lump sum हुआ है, कभी कभी mismatches होते हैं, and we call these as teaming and leading, कि आगे का बिल किसी पार्टी को पेमेंट किया है, वो जो अमाउंट है वो किसी और क्रेडिटर के अकाउंट में डाल दिया है, फिर वो क्रेडिटर का जो पेमेंट है वो किसी और में डालते हैं क्योंकि वो क्रेडिटर पैसा मांग रहा है, एंड दैट पर्सन हु हैज डन द फ्रॉड ही रियलाइजेस कि ये पेमेंट मांग रहा है, तो वो उसको पेमेंट करते हैं, बट उसके कहीं और अकाउंट में जाता है, एंड दिस इज हाउ इट हैपेंस. So where bill to bill receipt or bill to bill payments are not done, please ask confirmations for that. See, so what I'm trying to say, aise just to kickstart the process of getting external confirmations, select such ledger accounts, ledger balances, and send the confirmation to them. जो आप confirmation letter draft करते हैं, उसमें please ensure that you write a paragraph that this confirmation, either in physical form or in electronic form, should be sent directly to you as an auditor. Let us all agree that कहीं पे भी कुछ अगर fraudulent activity हुई है तो there are possibilities that the accountant, because अगर वो confirmation आता है जो books of account से mismatch है, let us say कोई client mail कर देता है और वो accountant को जाता है, client को जाता है, अपने पास नहीं आता है as a copy in the same mail. We all know कि अगर वो fraudulent हुआ है तो वो PDF जो है वो हटा के कुछ और PDF अपना correct करके वो हम लोग को भेज देगा, saying कि ये confirmation आ गया है which will match with his books of account. The PDF is editable. Let's be very candid. You should again directly communicate with the confirming party कि भाई आपका ये confirmation आया है. Is this confirmation sent by you? You know, wherever you have that doubt, as an auditor, I would say that you have that professional skepticism which you exercise and you come to know कि यहाँ पे कुछ element है. Physical copy भी जो है वो letter में लिखना चाहिए कि भाई kindly send it directly to the auditor, and then that is what it is. And another thing is with respect to positive confirmation or a negative confirmation. So negative confirmation is that where in the confirmation mail or the confirmation letter, we write that you communicate with us only if the balance is not matching. So there what is happening, that by default we are assuming that since that confirmation has not come, the balance is matching, which can be absolutely incorrect. And therefore even the standard says that a negative confirmation gives less persuasive audit evidence than a positive confirmation. So in all these cases you must write that kindly confirm the balance, whether it is matching or not matching, and if they can also provide the reconciliation or whatever they can give. But do not seek a negative confirmation, always seek a positive confirmation. So please ensure that external confirmations, when it comes to banks, when it comes to fixed deposits, when it comes to vendors, when it comes to customers, make it a part of the practice कि शायद चाहे वो जितना भी छोटा client हो, जितना भी छोटा business हो, कुछ ना कुछ कंफर्मेशन का प्रैक्टिस स्टार्ट करिए तो वो ऑटोमेटिक सिस्टम में इनबिल्ट होते जाएगा. एनालिटिकल प्रोसीजर्स, दिस इज व्हाट वी से इज द रेशियो एनालिसिस. टिपिकली हम लोग टैक्स ऑडिट के लिए करते हैं जीपी रेशियो, एनपी रेशियो, ऑल दोस थिंग्स वी डू. बट आई वुड सजेस्ट फ्रेंड्स दैट ratio analysis, analytical procedure is a very, very important part of our standards on audit and even of our audit procedures. Please ensure कि जो Excel file balance sheet की बनती है, 2-3 things I would just share over here, and where I found that there are chances of errors and omissions. One thing is that where you have a previous year number, हम जब comparatives देते हैं current year previous year, तो previous year में कुछ amount है, number है, but current year में नहीं है. Ensure that you seek an explanation for that. Similarly, vice versa, current year में number है, previous year में corresponding number नहीं है. Seek an explanation for that कि ऐसा क्या transaction है कि current year में है उसका और previous year में नहीं है. There are very high chances that there would be some exceptional item that would have been done this year, which might require an additional disclosure on your part as an auditor, or there might be a chances of some grouping, regrouping वो tally के ledger में इधर उधर कुछ किया होगा by which वो export करके error आई हो, and chances of grouping, regrouping happening, so that also you can correct. The third part is doing a actual ratio analysis. I'll just check if I have that Excel file. Tax audit finalization checklist. Yeah. So if you see, ये जो audit checklist finalization checklist की file है, which I had shown you at the beginning, which had all these things about the document for verification और पूरा, उसी में एक annexure 7 करके है with respect to ratios. तो अगर आप इसमें देखेंगे तो revenue from operations ये ratio है other income expenses, and with the reason कि कहाँ पे भी deviation है, you can put a benchmark of any deviation plus minus 5% that needs to be explained. So this is forming part of this file. Purchase ये हर एक line item है with respect to the profit and loss account, with respect to the balance sheet, trade payable का account payable turnover ratio for current year and previous year. Similarly, other current liabilities, any significant increase, decrease, inventory turnover ratio. So these are all the ratios which are there. These are the broad ratios. Again, in the financial statements, you can also have the subparts note-wise ratio analysis you should do, and any deviation plus minus 5% or whatever, that should be explained. Again, friends, when I talk of audit efficiency and audit quality, my submission, humble submission to everybody would be, make this transparent, share it with your team well before in advance. वो जब audit start करते हो उसको पहले ही client को तो आप ये file दे रहे हो, उनको भी बोलिए कि when they give you the financial statements for review, वो ये पूरा रेशियो एनालिसिस करके रेशियो में प्लस माइनस 5% जो भी है उसका एक्सप्लेनेशन का उसके रिलेटेड डॉक्यूमेंट्स गैदर करके फिर ही आपको ये फाइल रिव्यू के लिए दे. व्हाट वुड हैपन, लाइक आई सेड, अदरवाइज क्या होता है, वो हम लोग को दे देते हैं, हम लोग रेशियो एनालिसिस करते हैं, कोई मेजर डिविएशन आता है, वी अगेन आज द ऑडिट टीम, दे आर नॉट एबल टू एक्सप्लेन, वो वापस क्लाइंट के पास जाते हैं, क्लाइंट के पास से एक्सप्लेनेशन लेते हैं, फिर हमारे पास आते हैं, एंड दैट टू एंड फ्रो अगेन स्टार्ट्स. The moment you make it part of your audit process कि ये analytical review है, because this is a requirement of the standards on audit, and what happens under the standards on audit, ये आप Excel file preserve करते हैं, so that itself becomes your audit documentation under the standard on audit on the analytical procedure. And आपकी टीम जाती है तो वो खुद explain करके आती है, या तो client के पास ये file जाती है तो वो client खुद ही पूरा explanation दे के फिर आपको submit करता है या आपकी टीम को submit करते हैं, by which the whole audit you save a lot of time either in the to and fro or in understanding the transactions and activities, and at the same time you can bring in about a lot of, I would say, improvement in the audit quality, because at a very initial stage आप ये सब जो variations है आप उनको flag कर रहे हैं, आप उस पर time दे पा रहे हैं कि ये why are the reasons, what are the reasons for these deviations, उनके related documents क्या है, आप काफी पहले से उसको prepare कर रहे हैं, and it becomes a good documentation as well as it improves the audit quality as well as the audit efficiency. So that is with respect to SF 520 on the analytical procedure. Audit sampling, we all do audit sampling. I just requested you can bring in the materiality into it. and there are different sampling methods with respect to random or systematic monetary unit. These are all given in the standard, and therefore I would not spend much time on that, but please ensure that in your audit sampling you are able to cover the materiality. Subsequent events, this I will skip presently. Going concern also, presently I will skip. I will come to written representations. Friends, just like we start our documentation with an engagement letter, our audit should end with a MRL. That is the management representation letter or the written representations that we have. So written representations is something which is important, because that is again where the client signs and gives you. Like I said, I will take the example of contingent liability. I'll show one MRL and then we will take it further. Right? So this is a MRL addressed to the CFO. So if you look at this format, this representation letter is provided with the audit of finance for March 20 and so and so, blah and blah. See, cash flows और वो सब इसलिए highlight किया है because that would not be applicable to all entities. Like we discussed, level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 में cash flow आएगा, level 3 में नहीं आएगा. So the moment we mention cash flows, it is a level 1. अगर level 3 है तो ये highlight करके रखा है कि इसको आपको eliminate करना है. Our responsibility. So the client is talking about the responsibility that the client has. वो खुद की responsibility की इसमें letter में बात करता है, and which is in line with the engagement letter. Engagement letter में भी हमने बोला था कि भाई client की क्या responsibilities है, उसी के line पे ये MRL में भी वो acknowledge करते हैं कि क्या क्या उनकी responsibilities है, and then we confirm to the following representation. वो confirm करते हैं कि accounting policies है जो material critical है in determining the results, they are set out in the financial statement. मतलब policies जो है वो सारी लिखी है. They have reviewed year on year consistency है. There is no change in the accounting policy. Going concern basis है, accounting estimates है. If you see, this is a format of 10 pages, but उसमें हर एक section आपके जो balance sheet P&L के है उसके related representation from the client it happens. So प्रॉपर्टी प्लांट इक्विपमेंट है, उसके रिलेटेड जो भी है, टाइटल डीड्स है, आर हेल्ड इन द नेम ऑफ द एंटिटी, ये सब सारे कंफर्मेशन. सी, एमआरएल इज नॉट अ सब्स्टिट्यूट फॉर एन ऑडिट प्रोसीडियर. प्लीज डोंट थिंक एमआरएल में उसने लिख के दिया है तो मैं ऐसे ही साइन कर दूं. दैट इज नॉट देयर. यू हैव टू डिलिजेंटली डू द ऑडिट प्रोसीडियर. दिस इज इन सपोर्ट ऑफ द ऑडिट प्रोसीडियर्स दैट यू हैव डन. सो इंटेंजिबल एसेट्स, कैपिटल कमिटमेंट्स, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, तो ये उसके रिलेटेड सारे रिप्रेजेंटेशंस है in the MRL. Invested है, and we have bank balances, cash balance. MRL typically goes. Friends, let me tell you again over here, the issue that comes when we are doing the audit for a small and medium enterprise is that that entity is not competent to prepare the management representation letter. I appreciate, but that does not absolve us as an auditor not to take the management representation letter. What is the way out? Like I said, I'll share this template with the branch. Take this format and prepare for all the entities. These are some standard items which are there. You can go through it. It is a 10 page. कोई ज़्यादा time नहीं लगेगा, और जहाँ पे client में applicable नहीं है वो आप delete कर सकते हैं. You can remove all those things. You can become the standard template for that client, which then you can repeat every year. And once you repeat, you just have to bring about wherever there are any modifications. समझिए subsequent year में कोई foreign exchange transaction आया या कुछ ऐसा हुआ जिसमें you need to add or modify some of the representations. That is only what you need to do. Another thing what you can do is, my request is that when you are your office, आप जब balance sheet प्रिंट ले रहे हो, नॉर्मली वो सीए की ऑफिस में ही प्रिंट होती है, प्लीज आस्क योर क्लाइंट कि वो आपको लेटर हेड भेजे. उनके लेटर हेड में आप एमआरएल प्रिंट कर दीजिए. एमआरएल प्रिंट करके उनको साइन के लिए साथ में भेज दीजिए. बैलेंस शीट साइन होते होते साथ में आपका एमआरएल भी साइन हो जाएगा. अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर, सी फॉर टैक्स ऑडिट, अगेन आई हैव सीन that in majority of the cases proprietorships, partnerships वगैरह होती है, उसमें हम लोग appointment letter नहीं लेते हैं. I believe there is no such permission or exemption that has been given for not taking the appointment letter for a year-on-year tax audit. You have to take it as an part of your standards on audit and part of your audit documentation also. अभी हमारे ऑफिस में पीयर रिव्यू हुआ था, तो रिव्यूअर फर्स्ट थिंग ही वुड आस्क इज द अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर, इवन इन केस ऑफ द रिकरिंग ऑडिट. कंपनीज में अगर 5 साल का अपॉइंटमेंट होता है तो इट इज फाइन, बट इन टैक्स ऑडिट वी डोंट हैव एन अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ 5 years. It is a recurring audit, so every year's appointment letter has to be taken. So what you can do is जब बैलेंस शीट साइन के लिए भेज रहे हो तो क्लाइंट के लेटर हेड पे आप MRL भी बना दीजिए, अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर भी बना दीजिए और क्लाइंट को पूरा आप साथ में दे दीजिए. लेट देम साइन एंड सेंड इट टू यू, तो ऑटोमेटिक आपका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हो जाएगा. So my request, another homework, if you are ready to take it, is for all the audits that you have done for March 20, my humble request is please सारे के MRL मार्च में आप बना दीजिए. You have 1 month's time. आपका एक स्टैंडर्ड टेम्पलेट हो जाएगा, ऑफिस में सबको बिठा दीजिए MRL बनाने के लिए, सेंड इट टू द क्लाइंट, साइन ऑफ करके आपके फाइल में रख दीजिए. मार्च 20 का एक बार आप बना लेंगे, फिर एवरी ईयर का ये प्रोसेस ऑटोमाइज हो जाएगा. सो लाइक आई सेड, अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर, engagement letter, audit plan, audit progress report, checklists for applicability of accounting standard, auditing standard, engagement letter I said, then you have checklist for the finalization activities, you have the materiality checklist, and then finally to finish it off, you have the management representation letter. I think these 8-10 documents are something which are very basic and should not be difficult for any small or medium practitioner to implement. Right? And in case you find anywhere any difficulty, I am always available. You can give me a call and I would be able to help you, guide you about how you can take this forward. Using the work of another auditor, again, I would skip this because this is where there is a holding subsidiary relationship and the holding company auditor is required to rely on the work of the subsidiary auditor. Using the work of internal auditors. Friends, here also, what I believe is that there would be many entities in Nashik where there would be an internal audit firm separate from the statutory audit firm. मतलब internal audit applicable होगा, which would be done by some other chartered accountancy firm, and where you are the statutory auditors. Again, what I would request over here, friends, is please ensure that you ask the internal auditor कि वो internal audit का scope बनाए, वो scope आपके साथ share करें. You should also have a meeting with the internal auditor and the management and kindly see that whether the internal audit objective is being met. That is one. Second, whether there is any overlapping that is happening. See, many cases I have seen कि वो internal auditors के scope में होता है 100% vouching. और जब हम लोग अपनी टीम को भेजते हैं तो हम लोग उनको बोलते हैं भाई तुम भी 25% वाउचिंग आप कर लो. सो इज दैट नॉट एन ओवरलैप वेयर द इंटरनल ऑडिटर इज कॉम्पिटेंट, उनका रिपोर्ट आ गया है, उसने बोल दिया है कि ये सब रेक्टिफिकेशन करवा दिया एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स, एंड व्हाई डू यू नीड टू डू दैट वाउचिंग अगेन? यू कैन ब्रिंग इन the audit efficiency and, like I said, the audit quality by ensuring that your team can do a scrutiny based vouching. मतलब वो लेजर स्क्रूटिनी करेंगे और उसमें जहां जहां पे डिविएशन आएंगे, क्वेश्चंस आएंगे, उसी में वो लोग वाउचर उठा के वाउचिंग करेंगे. But you have the internal auditor scope as a part of your documentation. You have the report of the internal auditor as a part of your documentation, and you are also comfortable with the approach, the competency of the internal auditor, and in that case you can use the work of the internal audit function and you can ensure that your work the extent of your work is in sync with what the internal auditor has done. On the contrary, I would say you can also interact with the internal auditor and tell them that, see, for tax audit purposes we are required to do the whether the payments for the regular statutory dues have been made in time or not and all those things. So maybe the internal auditor may not do it, and especially where the internal auditor is happening at the end of the year. So end of the year वो करेंगे ये verification या हम लोग करेंगे. It might not make much of a difference, and you can always synchronize the activities with respect to the internal audit. Auditor's report. I think this is something which is very standard. We do a copy paste of every year. March 19 का हम लोग find replace करके March 20 कर देते हैं. अगर टाइम रहता है, बिकॉज ये सब लास्ट मिनट होता है, टाइम रहता है तो ओपिनियन पैराग्राफ में एक बार देख लेते हैं कि भाई ये प्रॉफिट लॉस जो है वो एक बार चेक कर लो बराबर लिखा है कि नहीं. फ्रेंड्स, अगेन आई शेयर्ड विथ यू दैट अंडर द ऑडिट रिपोर्ट आप लिख रहे हो कि यू हैव कंप्लाइड विद द ऑडिटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स, यू हैव कंप्लाइड with the audit documentation, so please ensure you do that and don't just sign off the report as it is. एक बार डिटेल में उनको पढ़ के give yourself comfort before you sign off. I will not go through all these things in details because these are all standard formats with respect to the auditor's report. Key audit matters, again this is for listed companies, so I don't think that would have much relevance with the members of Nashik, and in case you have any questions, like I said, I'm always available to respond on this matter also. Modification to the opinion, so where we have a qualified opinion, we have an adverse opinion, and we have a disclaimer of opinion. Friends, I would request that please don't shy away from giving any qualification, because it is your certificate which is at risk. And let me be very personal over here कि आप अगर क्लाइंट को बचाएंगे और आप फंस जाएंगे तो क्लाइंट आपको बचाने वाला नहीं है, राइट? सो ensure that you do the right type of opinion, you give the right type of opinion that is required. I will just say कि ये तीन में क्या फर्क है. क्लीन रिपोर्ट देते हो तो ठीक है. A qualified opinion is where we say that the financial statements, they give a true and fair view except for these one or two matters. Like समझिए AS2 apply नहीं हुआ है, ये नहीं हुआ है, वो है, तो except for that it is a true and fair view. That is what is a qualified opinion. What is an adverse opinion? Where you say that they do not give a true and fair view because of the following reasons. That is what is an adverse of opinion, adverse opinion. And disclaimer of opinion आपका है where you say कि भाई ये true and fair view है या नहीं है, आपको वही पता नहीं है, and that is where the disclaimer of opinion comes. So in a majority of the cases you would have a qualified opinion, and kindly look that wherever you feel so you can give a qualified opinion. And that would, if I look into the present situation, maybe that would be relevant when we talk about the going concern applicability. If that is impaired, that is a going concern assumption is impaired, and the client has not prepared accounts as per that, then you might need to give a adverse opinion on that. Emphasis of matter paragraph. Again, this is something which is very, very important, and I've seen this now being used extensively by the auditors. Please understand what is the difference between the emphasis of matter and the other matter. The emphasis of matter is certain information where adequate disclosures have been made in the financial statements, right? But still, as an auditor, you feel that this is of a significant nature or of a significant amount that you need to draw attention of the users or the stakeholders of that audit report कि आपको उसका attention draw करना है for that note, and therefore in your audit report you have the emphasis of matter paragraph where you will give reference of that particular note के financial statements में ये note में ये दिया है और उसके related you want to draw your attention, and also that your opinion is not qualified in respect of such matter. See, as far as examples of qualification, emphasis, other matters and all is concerned, we have come out with a publication on the WRC website. It is with a search engine where we have done a lot of research on some of the listed companies, and we have categorized them into different sections. I would request members, you can go to the WRC website and you will find a tab on the e-publications, the anthologies, और उसमें तीन है ऐसे publication जो search engine के साथ है, of which one is on key audit matters and other matters. Maybe company wise, industry wise, you can just do some search and that would give an idea कि भाई emphasis में क्या आता है, other matter में क्या आता है और audit qualification में क्या क्या आता है, and also with respect to key audit matters if it is applicable. Auditor's responsibilities relating to other information. Again, this is more so in case of listed companies कि वो जो annual report print करते हैं shareholders के लिए, उसमें MDA, that is the management discussion and analysis, और वो सब section में जो भी financial statements related numbers आते हैं, as an auditor we need to ensure that there are no misrepresentation that is with respect to such numbers, and we have to include this paragraph. ये जो standard है 2 साल से ही applicable हुआ है, so you can just go through it and understand what are the requirements. Friends, now coming to the next portion, I will be ending in another 5-10 minutes. What I would say is, अगर आपके पास नॉर्मल ऑडिट वाले कोई भी रिपोर्ट आते हैं, टैक्स ऑडिट है, कंपनी ऑडिट है, फाइन, you follow the essays that we have discussed so far and you have to give your audit report as per SA 700. Anything that you are certifying which is not in the regular course of your audit, please ensure that you put a speed breaker on that. Go to the ICI website, into resources section, you go on the engagement standard and check के ये जो आप सर्टिफाई कर रहे हैं विच इज नॉट इन द नॉर्मल कोर्स ऑफ योर ऑडिट रिपोर्ट, उसके लिए कौन सा स्टैंडर्ड ऑन ऑडिट एप्लीकेबल हो रहा है और उसमें जो रिपोर्टिंग फॉर्मेट है वो आप यूज कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं. It is very, very important because why I'm saying is many times we give a report, let us say ETIB certification है या GST audit है, तो आप particular state का अलग से certification कर रहे हैं, and it is not a full set of financial statements. Therefore, in such cases, what happens is that you have to go through these standards from SA 800, SA 805, SA 810. I will not go through in details. I will share this presentation, like I said, and you can go through it that in which standard, what is the requirement. I'll just give a couple of examples to make things understand better. Let us say it is a telecom company और telecom company को उनके जो license fees related कुछ calculation करने हैं on the financial statements, and these are some special purpose fair जिसमें वो financial statements बनाते हैं. तो उनके जो audit report है वो SA 700 नहीं use करके they would use SA 800. Special considerations, audit of financial statements prepared in accordance with special purpose framework. Similarly, oil and gas related है, तो उसके related there are some production sharing contracts और उसके related financial statements बनाने होते हैं. So that would go under SA 800 and not under SA 700. Similarly, SA 805, audit of single financial statements and specific elements, accounts or items of a financial statement, and SA 810, engagements to report on summary financial statements. So these are the cases where you need to report, the audit report format is given in the standard itself, and I would therefore request you, please ensure that you use the right standard and the right reporting for whatever certification you are doing. Standard on review engagement, again SRE 2400, that where you are not the auditor. So it is about historical financial statements, but where you are not the auditor and you are to report on the financial statements, you have been engaged to perform a review of the historical financial statements. In such a case, you have to follow SRE 2400, and this review, because you are not the statutory for that entity, you will give a limited assurance. You will say that it is not free from material misstatement, and you will not say, you will not express an audit opinion of true and fair, right? So that is something which is important, which you need to see when you are giving any certification with respect to appointed as the auditor. Assurance engagements other than historical financial information, that is SAE, standards on assurance engagement. So here you have examination of prospective financial information, controls at a service organization, pro forma financial information. And then you have a series of the SRS, that is standards on related services. Compilation engagement. Over here also, I would say the SRS 4410, in case, many cases I have seen that where the clients, because of bank requirement or to extend their limits, audit complete नहीं होता है and वो लोग बोलते हैं आप trial balance certify करके दे दीजिए, then you cannot give the trial balance certified even as a true copy or anything. What you can do is maybe you can think of going into this SRS 4410 where it is a compilation engagement. So what the compilation engagement says कि आपको trial balance दिया है और वो जो trial balance है उसके basis पे आपने financial statements prepare किए हैं, and then you have issued a certificate for that saying that this is a compilation engagement and you have not done any audit and you will not express any opinion with respect to that. So in such situations, I would request you to kindly go to SRS 4410. Friends, with that, I come to an end of my presentation on the standards on audit. But my request over here is that please ensure that these are some of the very basic elementary documents that I have requested you to implement. And it is not at all difficult if you put it as part of your normal practice of implementing these documents. I would also share this one ICI publication on Practitioner's Guide to Audit of Small Entities. This can be a very helpful document. It is of a recent thing about 2020. And if you see some of the aspects over here is what we have discussed with respect to audit planning. Like this is a model working paper about the client. So it gives about the letter of आपको tick करना है permanent file, working file कहाँ पे ये available है. So this links your financial statements or your audit documentation to the various files. Planning control, balance sheet items कहाँ पे कौन से documents है आप इसको linking आप कर सकते हैं. You can use this specimen, these samples. This is a profile information about the auditee. आपको याद होगा I had mentioned that आप एक permanent file बनाइए. Permanent file में you have the profile and the information about the auditee. So in that case also, this is the format that you can use with respect to financial year, constitution, कौन सा audit आप कर रहे हैं, place of business, and audit, phone numbers, fax numbers, PAN, and such things. So this is another thing that applicability checklist, कहाँ पे क्या applicable है. I had also shared one checklist which was in-house that was prepared by me. You can use that. Engagement letter है, उसका ये format दिया है. That also I have discussed with you. Acceptance formality. So these are all checklists that have been given in this book, which you can definitely use. And to start, and also like I said, I will share these files with the branch, which the branch can in turn share with the members. And in case you have any difficulties, you have my number in this presentation also, which I can share. But I would be very happy if you can start using some of this documentation and making it part of your regular practice. Thank you. Thank you very much. And in case you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. I request members to unmute themselves one by one and ask the questions if any.
Sir, in case of where we have to report about going concern, do key audit matters paragraph relate to that? In case of going concern also?
See, in my view, going concern, there is a separate paragraph where it is required. And see, going concern, you can definitely put it as a key audit matter where the accounts are not required to be prepared under going concern, but still, there are huge losses. The net worth has been eroded. And like I'll give a simple example, which happens typically in case of foreign entities, where the holding company gives a assurance that they will pump in money. See, when it comes to a going concern, where losses are more than the capital and reserves. And that is one of the trigger points for going concern. And there we say, and we mention in the notes also with respect to the going concern, that what are the assumptions that the management has made that in spite of the net worth being eroded or the going concern point triggered, we have not prepared the accounts on liquidation basis. So in such a case, two options. One is that if you have done the whole diligence with respect to that assumption, you can put it under the emphasis of matter, and or alternately, if you want to put it under the key audit matters, you can do that. But if you ask me personally, under key audit matters, as an auditor, I am taking much more responsibility, because there I also give an explanation about what are the audit procedures and everything that I have performed, and to ensure that if I talk of going concern, that it is not required on a liquidation basis. Whereas in the emphasis of matter, I am definitely drawing attention to that particular note, where in that case also I have done all the procedures, but emphasis would be better than a key audit matter.
Anyone else? So I think we can move forward to formal vote of thanks. I request Sanjeevan to offer a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vishal sir. Indeed, we wouldn't have had this much participation in physical presence, and it was a very informative lecture. Thank you for coming on this in such situation and such a short notice. And we hope we will have much more interesting sessions in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants for your patient hearing and listening to us. Thank you. As said by sir, you can mail the queries further to him, or you can also send us to the branch. We will convey it to him further. Also, the PPT will be made available, and Excel sheets will be made available by tomorrow to everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, sir. We should have a round of applause for sir. Please unmute yourself and thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
In case of, we have to give all these in audit matters only in case of listed companies. But